Has the funeral ended? Come back quickly. It's Eliza's birthday today, my dear daughter. Lori, my mother-in-law, informed me about Shelley's passing at only 5 years old on the day of her farewell. Strangely, she didn't attend her granddaughter's funeral and instead asked me to return for Eliza's birthday, her sister-in-law. I was bewildered by her behavior. Anger mingled with grief, prompting me to make a phone call. I'm Rel, a 33-year-old homemaker, married to Milo, who's 2 years older. We met through a friend 6 years ago and have been happily married ever since. We were blessed with our daughter, Shelley, soon after marriage. At 5 years old, she's at her most adorable age. It's heartwarming, yet her fate was tragically harsh. Shelley's health was fragile. 2 years ago, when she was 3, she started experiencing frequent fevers and colds. There was also swelling in her neck, which led us to rush to the hospital, thinking it might be mumps. After numerous tests and an agonizing wait, the doctors revealed the devastating diagnosis: malignant lymphoma, a type of childhood cancer. My world shattered, and I desperately pleaded, "There must be some mistake, doctor. Please tell me this isn't true." Despite the medical team's presence, I couldn't contain my tears. Immediate hospitalization was necessary. Even as we hurried home to gather essentials, I couldn't stop crying. Milo, my husband, cried alongside me but also urged, "We have to be strong. Shelley will pull through," his words filled with determination. We were briefed on the treatment plan, and I had to sign consent forms for procedures like blood transfusions and surgery. The grueling treatments commenced: endless IV trips, blood draws, transfusions, and chemotherapy. I quit my part-time job to be with Shelley at the hospital round the clock. Sometimes, Milo would take time off work to visit, insisting, "You need to rest too, Michelle, or you'll burn out." During his visits, I managed things at home or caught up on much-needed sleep to keep going. During the initial days at the hospital, Shelley cried often, but gradually she adjusted to the routine, crying less as time went on. The nurses praised her resilience. Shelley didn't shed a tear today during her injection, they commended. Despite the challenges of hair loss and weakness from chemotherapy, she never complained. Instead, she greeted us with smiles and happiness. Drawing became her solace. "Mom, Dad, look." Shelley proudly displayed a sketch of Milo and me in her notebook. "It's wonderful, Shelley," we praised. Her lively chatter in her hospital bed uplifted us. When her immune system weakened, she had to stay in a sterile room. But after a month, her condition improved, and she could finally come home for a brief respite. "I want to go back to preschool," Shelley announced one day. So we took her back after a long hiatus. Watching her play with her friends filled us with joy. Later, when my mom visited, seeing Shelley lively and cuddled in her arms made it hard to believe she was sick. "Mom, this smells like home," Shelley remarked, sniffing a towel that had been airing at home. Suddenly, she complained of a headache. "Let me check." "Oh, you have a slight fever. Stay here. I'll make some soup." After tucking Shelley into bed and rushing to finish chores, the doorbell rang. Glancing at the monitor, I saw Lori. I instantly regretted not ignoring it. Lori's unexpected visit left me speechless. I wanted to ask, "What brings you here?" but held my tongue. Normally, having a caring mother-in-law would be a delight, but Lori, Milo's mom, was the last person I wanted to see. I imagined her retort would be, "Do I need a reason to visit my son's house?" If I dared to ask, "Do you have a hobby of harassing your daughter-in-law?" that might just confirm her suspicions. Since the beginning of our marriage, Lori had continuously harassed me, criticizing my lack of higher education and my appearance, mocking my height and supposed lack of cuteness. Her ability to wield hurtful words astounded me. In the past, my father-in-law acted as a buffer, reprimanding her behavior, which made things somewhat bearable. But after he passed away during our second year of marriage, Lori's mistreatment escalated. Left unchecked, she'd play petty tricks, like ordering steak for me despite my preferences or turning off the hot water while I showered. Milo's older sister, Eliza, a successful career woman married to a prosecutor, was the apple of Lori's eye. She often compared me unfavorably to Eliza, making snide remarks about our differences. Eliza has a son, Jace, in second grade, she boasts. During Christmas visits, the contrast in Lori's treatment of Jace and Shelley was painfully evident. It seemed as though she couldn't see Shelley's charm simply because she didn't approve of her daughter-in-law. As I busily prepared soup, Lori barged in uninvited from next door. "Yes, Shelley has a fever," I responded tersely, hoping she'd take a hint to leave. But she persisted, commenting, "Such a delicate child. I wonder who she takes after. Certainly not our family. Your dad had cancer, didn't he?" "Yes, Lori, I've explained countless times. This illness isn't hereditary. While my dad did pass away from cancer when I was in high school, malignant lymphoma isn't genetic, except in certain virus-related cases. How many times must I repeat myself? Is she losing her memory?" In the end, Lori merely glanced at Shelley, made her spiteful remarks, and departed. I couldn't help but wonder if she was suffering from dementia. After checking on Shelley, exchanging a few sarcastic words, I left perplexed by Lori's purpose. Perhaps she was just bored. For a year, Shelley moved between hospital care and brief respites at home. After about a year and a half of intense treatment, she finally completed her therapy, and we welcomed her back home. She returned to preschool, and we even enjoyed a family trip to the aquarium, where she walked around with boundless energy. I never lost hope in Shelley's recovery. However, when she turned 5, a year after leaving the hospital, my worst fears materialized. She relapsed. The treatments resumed, including spinal injections, radiation therapy, and battles with pneumonia and high fevers. I did everything I could to ease her discomfort, even undergoing a bone marrow transplant for her. Sadly, my cells didn't take, and her condition deteriorated. Then, the doctor delivered the devastating news. There's nothing more we can do. Further treatment would only add to Shelley's suffering. It was a heartbreaking realization that time with her was limited. We made the decision to bring Shelley home so we could cherish our remaining time together as a family. We indulged her every wish, from participating in preschool activities to playing with her friends. Despite her own struggles, Shelley's bright smile never faded, bringing joy to everyone around her. Mom visited frequently, offering her support during these difficult days. I had promised myself not to cry in front of Shelley, but sometimes emotions overwhelmed me, and tears would escape. During those moments, Shelley would ask, "Mom, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Despite her own pain, she remained remarkably caring, showing concern for me. I pray for her happiness to last forever, for a miracle to save her, but sadly, my prayers went unanswered. Despite her outward appearance of health, Shelley's blood tests showed a worsening condition. She gradually lost the ability to walk. Yet we clung to hope, believing she would reach her 6th birthday. However, Shelley's health declined rapidly. She began to struggle with breathing, and the doctor warned us to prepare ourselves for the worst. Despite my efforts to remain composed, tears flowed uncontrollably. In a haze of grief, I whispered, "I love you," to Shelley. Despite her own weakness, she summoned the strength to utter her final words. As dawn broke and Shelley's condition worsened, the doctor tried desperately to save her. We pleaded for her to hold on, taking turns holding her in our arms, wishing for her to find peace. Shelley fought bravely, but eventually she slipped away from us. "Shelley, please respond. Open your eyes." I clung to her hand, which grew colder by the moment. There was no time to process my grief. I was immediately consumed by the whirlwind of funeral arrangements and preparations. Keeping busy seemed like the only way to hold on to my sanity. At the funeral home, I couldn't help but confront Lori, asking, "Are you not coming?" She simply replied, "The living matter more than the dead. Eliza is returning from abroad. It's her birthday today. You need to pick up the cake." Her callousness left me reeling, struggling to contain my anger. "At least bring a gift later. You must come, or I won't forgive you," I demanded. "As if you have the authority to forgive anyone," she retorted. Fed up with her excuses, I blocked Lori's number and reached out to someone for support. Despite the pain, the funeral was filled with people who came to bid farewell. Hospital staff, Shelley's preschool friends, and my own circle of friends. Tears flowed freely as we mourned Shelley's passing, a testament to the love she'd inspired. We adorned her coffin with her beloved sunflowers, and her friends tucked heartfelt letters inside. Milo stood strong as he represented our grieving family. Several hours later, Milo and I stood outside his parents' house. Despite Lori's desperate pleas for help as we entered, we ignored her and made our way to the living room. Inside, Eliza's family and a few relatives had gathered, their eyes fixed on Lori with disapproval. Eliza was the first to address us, offering her apologies. "I'm deeply sorry, Rel. We had no idea today was Shelley's funeral." After blocking Lori's calls, I had reached out to my sister-in-law, Eliza. Despite the ongoing tensions fueled by Lori's behavior and constant comparisons between Eliza and me, we shared a close bond, akin to real sisters. As an only child, I cherished Eliza's presence in my life, and her son Jace often played with Shelley even during her illness. Eliza frequently visited us, showing genuine concern. Unfortunately, this year, Eliza's work commitments abroad coincided with her birthday, overlapping with Shelley's funeral. While we were preoccupied with arrangements, we had entrusted Lori to inform her side of the family. However, Lori's misguided actions led her to inform relatives about a birthday celebration for Eliza's return, omitting any mention of Shelley's funeral. Upon her return, Eliza reached out to me again, only to discover that the burial had already taken place, leaving them waiting for our return. Amidst the somber atmosphere, Shelley's absence was keenly felt as Eliza and others mourned her loss amidst the awkward silence. Lori's words cut deep as she callously suggested, "You can always have another child." The most insensitive remark imaginable. In response, Eliza, with a fiery glare, grabbed the cake meant for her birthday and hurled it at Lori's face. "Cleanse that twisted personality of yours," she demanded, dragging Lori to the shower room and soaking her clothes in the process. Amidst the chaos, when questioned about Lori's actions, I weakly explained. Lori kept pressuring me to rush back for Eliza's birthday preparations. The relatives reacted with shock and disgust. After being drenched in the shower, Lori returned, despised by everyone present. Defending herself, she blurted out, "But it's Eliza's birthday party. She's returning after so long. Shelley was already sick, not expected to survive. Surely Eliza's birthday takes precedence, right?" However, her feeble excuse was met with fury. "A birthday party? Preposterous. And you called Rel for that? If Shelley meant anything to you, how could you disregard Milo's grief over losing his daughter? Why did you fail to attend your own granddaughter's funeral?" Eliza's righteous anger was unleashed. "No, but," Lori faltered, unable to conjure a suitable excuse. It was then that Jace, her grandson, spoke up softly. "Grandma, do you really love your grandchildren?" "Of course I do, Jace. I love you and Eliza's child," Lori replied defensively. But Jace's next words pierced through the tension. "What does that mean? So Shelley, your granddaughter, wasn't loved because she was sick, but Eliza's child is loved because she's healthy? Are you saying Shelley didn't matter?" These words echoed the sentiments of Lori's brother and sister-in-law, who shared their own grievances about Lori's past behavior. With no one coming to her defense, Lori's presence diminished, overshadowed by the weight of her actions. "We're leaving, Milo, Michelle. Let's talk another time," I announced, exchanging heartfelt hugs with my supportive relatives. Eliza followed suit, declaring her decision to sever ties with her mother. "Mom, we're done. You always favored successful people like Eliza, never caring for Shelley." Milo confronted his mother sadly. "It's not like that, Milo. You didn't meet my expectations like Eliza did. You only care about those who do as you want," Lori retorted, her words laden with regret. As I handed Lori something beside me, it was a drawing of her made by Shelley. In the picture, Lori was depicted with a genuine smile. "Despite everything, Shelley admired you. She saw kindness in you that I never did. She was a pure and loving child, even during her illness," I explained, watching as Lori broke down, clutching the drawing tightly. As we left Lori's house, ignoring her pleas, we knew our paths had diverged irreparably. Later, my uncle-in-law's family visited us, offering apologies for Lori's behavior. While Lori seemed remorseful, the damage was irreparable. As my aunt-in-law wisely observed, Lori had always been troublesome, and it was unlikely she would change. In the aftermath of the incident, other relatives also distanced themselves from Lori. Despite her loneliness and regrets, her past actions had alienated those around her. As the days passed and grief settled in, I found solace in connecting with other parents who had lost children to the same illness. Reaching out to Eliza and meeting her brought relief, and Milo and I found comfort in adopting a puppy, a symbol of renewal and hope in the wake of our loss. As I grappled with the pain of Shelley's absence, I found myself longing for the day when we would reunite in heaven. But until then, I vowed to live a life worthy of her memory, carrying her love and spirit with me always.
Now that the caregiving's over, let's get a divorce. Oh, and leave the inheritance to us." Serena chuckled, her tone dripping with smugness. Carl, my husband, stood beside her, nodding along with a sly grin. "It's my parents-in-law's funeral, and they're already talking about this." I couldn't help but sigh quietly to myself. "Dad, Serena, seriously? We're at a funeral?" My daughter Katie shot back, her face a mix of disbelief and frustration. She stared at them, clearly disgusted. Carl only smirked, dismissing her concern. "It's better to get these things out of the way early." "Stay out of it, kid." Katie clenched her fists, visibly irritated. I gently patted her shoulder, then stepped in front of her, turning toward Carl and Serena. "And all right," I said with a calm smile, as if everything was going according to plan. Everyone turned to me in shock, their eyes wide. "Mom, this is fine, Katie. I've already got the divorce papers ready." "You were oddly prepared for this." When I presented the divorce papers, Carl gave me a suspicious look but still signed them. I made sure to check his signature carefully before I walked away with Katie. The next day, my phone buzzed incessantly with missed calls from Carl. Seeing his name flash on the screen, I couldn't help but smile. "My name's Ellison. I'm a 42-year-old stay-at-home mom who works remotely. I have a daughter, Katie, who's in college. And my soon-to-be ex-husband, Carl, is the same age as me. Carl and I met at a party thrown by a mutual friend." "Hey, Ellison, we might be from the same hometown, right?" That was his first line. Turns out, we grew up in neighboring towns. We ended up chatting for hours, reminiscing about old hangouts and schools. Instantly hitting it off, we exchanged numbers by the end of the night. "Ellison, you're into camping too." "I go solo camping all the time." "Yeah, I love weekend trips out in the wilderness." We shared the same hobbies, and it naturally brought us closer together. Carl's upbeat, adventurous personality drew me in, and after a few dates, our relationship grew. A few years passed, and we eventually got married. "You're our daughter now. Yo, rely on us for anything, anytime." My in-laws, Abby and Mark, warmly accepted me as part of their family, despite being a stranger, since both of my parents had passed away before I got married. I vividly remember how much their words meant to me. Soon after the wedding, I became pregnant with Katie. "Katie, I heard you got into a fight with one of your friends." "Yay, because I thought they were wrong." Katie has always been the type to calmly speak her mind, no matter if the other person is a boy or even an adult. Sometimes it gets her into trouble, but most of the time, she isn't wrong. And if she is, she's the kind of kid who will apologize sincerely. Don't just think you can keep everything to yourself. Even you, Mom, you need to speak up when something's bothering you. I know, but sometimes it just feels like a hassle. That's exactly the problem. If you keep letting things slide, it won't be good for anyone. Katie doesn't hold back, even with me, which often leaves me chuckling at her blunt honesty. Katie's got a good head on her shoulders. Yay, I'm looking forward to her future. Thanks, Grandpa, Grandma. Abby and Mark would always watch our conversations, smiling fondly. Katie adored them, and she never said anything harsh to them. Abby and Mark were equally fond of Katie, showering her with love and care. "Ellison, you must be busy, right? Leave Katie to us." "But Mom, aren't you already dealing with a lot?" "It's fine. Taking care of Katie is a welcome distraction." Whenever I was swamped with work, Abby and Mark would happily look after Katie, letting me focus on my job. I was immensely grateful to them for that. All right, time to get to work again. For the sake of my precious family's smiles, I continued working hard, both at my job and at home. Nowadays, our home is filled with laughter and happiness, but 12 years ago, things were tough. What? Abby and Mark had been taken to the hospital. I received a call from the hospital while I was working. Apparently, Mark had collapsed when he was out. And when Abby heard this news, she panicked and fell down the stairs. Both were rushed to the hospital. I quickly informed my boss and dashed to the hospital. "Carl, what are you doing?" I repeatedly tried calling Carl from the cab on my way to the hospital, but he didn't answer. Frustrated, I texted him, "Get to the hospital as soon as possible," and hurried to the hospital. At least it's a relief that their lives aren't in danger. I'm so sorry for causing such trouble. Mark had a pre-existing condition, and it seems he collapsed due to a flare-up. Luckily, they were in a busy area, and someone called an ambulance right away. Thanks to that, they were able to treat him quickly, and the doctor explained that with about a month of hospitalization, he should recover. However, he would need assistance moving forward. I'm sorry for disturbing you at work. I never imagined something like this would happen. Abby had fractured part of her leg, but her life wasn't in danger, and thankfully, she hadn't hit her head, so there were no signs of long-term damage. With proper rehabilitation, she'd be able to live without major issues. Please don't worry about it at all. But what should we do from here? For now, since they were in the hospital, there was no need to worry about their daily lives. However, the real issue would arise after they were discharged. At that time, we were living in an apartment about an hour's drive from my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law, Serena, lived far away, living with her boyfriend. This left Abby and Mark alone in their home. No matter how much rehab they do, it's worrying to think of you living alone, isn't it? Yes, it is. Abby nodded anxiously at my words. It was only natural to feel that way. Abby would be dealing with her own recovery, and on top of that, there was Mark's condition to worry about. As I was trying to figure out what to do, "How are Dad and Mom doing?" I received a text from Carl. I excused myself from Abby and called Carl. "Stop calling me so much. I'm working." Carl finally picked up the phone, sounding clearly annoyed. I was furious. How could he be so indifferent when his parents had been rushed to the hospital? I struggled to hold back my irritation and explain the situation with his parents. "So that's what happened. And I think it's going to be tough for them to live on their own after they're discharged. Then just move in with them and take care of them yourself." "What?" Carl nonchalantly suggested that we live with them. I had, of course, considered the idea of moving in. It would be difficult to manage looking after Katie, who had just started elementary school, while also commuting to check on Abby and Mark. Serena wasn't the type to help with caregiving. I've been thinking that the apartment is a bit cramped anyway. Plus, my parents' house is closer to the office, so it's convenient. Well, that's true, but all right, make sure we're moved in by the time Dad and Mom are discharged. With that, Carl hung up the phone. I sighed at how Carl had decided everything on his own, then explained the situation to Abby and Mark. "Oh no, we can't burden you like that." "Exactly. There are plenty of facilities that can help these days." But in Carl's mind, the decision is probably already made. Besides, I'd feel more comfortable this way too. Fortunately, Katie's school was located between the apartment and my in-laws' house, so she didn't need to transfer. After discussing things thoroughly, we all agreed to move in with Abby and Mark when they were discharged. "We don't want to keep being a burden on you. I'll help out too." Abby was motivated in her rehabilitation, and she helped with what housework she could. Katie also pitched in, so we had no problems living together. Moreover, when I talked to my boss, they allowed me to switch to remote work, which enabled me to balance my job and caregiving. Mark, too, did his best to avoid being a burden and cooperated with everything, which made me think moving in together had been the right decision. Carl's coming home late again. It seems he's busy with work. The only issue we had was Carl. He made no effort to help with housework, childcare, or caregiving. Even Abby and Mark were exasperated with him. "We're fine without Dad around," Katie would say. Even she had given up on him. Still, I figured it was better not to have him around getting in the way. So I endured his behavior without saying anything. A few years later, it's been a while, still alive, Serena showed up out of nowhere. I had been working when she brazenly barged into the house, and I rushed to the front door in surprise. "Serena, what are you doing here all of a sudden? Oh, is there a problem with me coming to my parents' house? Of course, there is. You haven't contacted us in ages, and now you suddenly show up out of the blue. As I voiced my surprise, Abby, who was standing behind me with a suspicious look on her face, also spoke up. By this time, thanks to rehab, Abby had regained enough mobility to move around with a cane without needing assistance. Seeing Abby like that, Serena gave a sly smile. You're looking better than I thought. Actually, I was hoping you could give me a little financial help. She came asking for money before even showing concern for her parents. I was at a loss for words, and Abby let out a deep sigh. You're a full-time employee, aren't you? Even though you're earning a proper salary, you've come here to ask for money. Well, Ryan's being stingy. Currently, Serena is working as a secretary for Mark's uncle, Ryan, who owns a company. By the way, Carl also works at the same company, meaning he can't go against Ryan. Ryan is a serious person who treats everyone equally, whether they're family or company executives. I asked him to raise my salary a little since we're family, but all he said was that if I wanted more money, I'd have to work harder. That's only fair. Anyway, could you get me something to drink? It's hot outside, and I'm thirsty. Ignoring Abby's words, Serena headed to the living room. Sighing internally, I brought her a cup of coffee. Here you go. That took long enough. And coffee? Really? Shouldn't you be offering beer or something on an occasion like this? It was unbelievable to hear that from someone who had shown up unannounced. I struggled to suppress my irritation and handed her the coffee with a forced smile. I apologize for that, but I'm working right now. Oh, don't worry about it. You can go back to your work, Allison. Serena gave me a condescending look as she spoke. Working from home. It's probably just some petty side gig, right? Must be sad, making only a few dollars while pretending it's a real job. Her words irritated me. I have nothing against side jobs, but being mocked like this made my blood boil. For your information, I'm earning about the same as Carl. And it's a proper position, with decent responsibilities. Well, whatever. Anyway, I've met someone recently, and I really like him. With that, she shifted her attention from me to Abby, launching into a boring brag about her new boyfriend. Abby listened disinterestedly, while giving me a look that told me I was free to leave. Grateful for the silent cue, I slipped out and returned to my workroom. Enough. Get out of here right now. A while later, I heard Mark's angry voice, though he needed assistance to move. His cognitive abilities were perfectly fine. He was probably scolding Serena as a father. Not long after, I heard Serena's voice shouting, especially when your daughter came all the way here, don't expect me to rely on any of you anymore. Then came the sound of the front door slamming, and I knew she had left. Once it had quieted down, I headed to check on Abby and Mark. Are you both all right? Yay, sorry for the commotion. Don't worry about Serena. We'll handle her. Abby and Mark were clearly exhausted. Seeing them like that, I couldn't help but wonder if there was anything I could do to help. However, no good ideas came to mind, and I found myself deep in thought. Hey, Carl. About Serena. Since then, Serena had made several more sudden visits, always leaving behind some form of trouble. She interrupted my work and caregiving, deliberately made a mess of the house, and continued to behave obnoxiously. Abby and Mark would scold her, but it never seemed to bother her. You can't even manage to live your life without relying on others. She sneered, leaving with something valuable each time. We tried taking away her keys a few times, but I'm coming in. Serena, where did you get a key? That's none of your business. Somehow, she always managed to get a new key and let herself in, making it difficult to keep her out. Worried that she might eventually cause problems for Katie, I decided to consult Carl. Serena won't listen to me, no matter what I say. But Carl wasn't willing to deal with it. He probably found the whole situation with Serena to be too much of a hassle. Couldn't you at least help a little? You don't do anything around the house. I contribute by paying the bills, don't I? Carl was a so-called elite employee, steadily rising through the ranks of his company. He made more money than his colleagues and contributed a large portion to our household expenses, which was true. I contribute to the bills too. And on top of that, I handle the housework and caregiving. Remote work doesn't make much money. Anyway, I'm leaving all of that to you. In the end, Carl shoved everything onto me and quickly made his escape. I never imagined he'd turn out like this. Before we got married, Carl was admired for stepping up and taking on difficult tasks, but now he only seemed concerned about his own self-preservation. My affection for him had been fading by the day, but Abby and Mark are good people. I'll just have to endure this, at least until Katie gets into college. I've always been good at enduring things, but it seems Katie didn't like seeing me that way. I think it's wrong that Mom's the only one who has to endure things. She began to voice her concerns. Katie wasn't wrong. I struggled with how to respond, but Abby often stepped in, saying, "Katie is so kind." That helped stop any further questioning, and I was grateful. If only I had Abby, Mark, and Katie, that would be enough. I found myself muttering as I watched Carl laze around the house. 12 years passed like that. Katie successfully enrolled in the university she had hoped to attend, and now lives on her own. I'm so sorry for causing you so much trouble, Allison. Please don't worry about it. I'm the one who's grateful for everything you and Abby have done for me. But both Abby and Mark had steadily grown weaker over the years. Mark's condition worsened slowly, and he was eventually hospitalized. Abby, on the other hand, without you, Allison, I don't think Abby could have managed at all. Abby had been tormented by the weight of caring for Mark and dealing with Serena's behavior, leaving her mentally and emotionally exhausted. Just the other day, she collapsed at home and was rushed to the hospital. But sadly, she passed away. I have to live a little longer for Abby's sake, at least. Thank you, Allison. If anything happens to me, that was our last conversation. Shortly after, Mark's condition worsened suddenly, and he passed away as well. Grandpa, Grandma, they were so close, they even passed away together, Katie tearfully said as she arrived at the hospital after I informed her of the news. I comforted her, all the while fuming at Carl for not showing up. Dad's gone. Well, he sure took his time after that collapse 12 years ago, Carl said when he finally arrived, 3 hours after Katie. Frustrated by his behavior, I recalled my last conversation with Mark and held back my anger. Let's just hold the funeral with Moms. It's less hassle that way. Take care of the arrangements. All right, I responded coldly, but inside, I was thinking, just wait. I'll get my revenge. Not long after, Abby and Mark's funeral was held. Many people came to pay their respects, a testament to how loved and respected they were. My deepest condolences. Thank you. May I ask how you knew Abby and Mark? Actually, I've been dating Serena, and we were planning on coming to introduce ourselves as we intend to marry soon. Among the mourners was Bruce, Serena's much boasted about boyfriend. He was extremely polite, making me wonder why he was with someone like Serena. Allison, can I have a word? Carl called out to me after we had finished greeting the guests. Dad might pull something, so I'm coming too, Katie said, clearly having lost all trust in Carl. We entered a separate room, where Serena was already waiting, smirking in a way that made me uneasy. Carl joined her. So, what do you want? First of all, thanks for all your hard work taking care of the parents. Because of you, we got to enjoy an easy life. His words sounded appreciative, but the sneer on his face betrayed his true intentions. And then, he said the worst thing. Now that the caregiving's over, let's get a divorce. Oh, and leave the inheritance to us. Serena chimed in with that same wicked grin. They had no shame, saying such things right in the middle of Abby and Mark's funeral. I sighed inwardly, thinking how low they had sunk. What are you talking about, Dad? We're in the middle of a funeral, Katie snapped, glaring at them in my place. But Carl just laughed mockingly. These things are better handled quickly. Stay out of it, kid, Katie's frustration was evident on her face. I gently patted her shoulder and stepped forward to face Carl and Serena myself. And, "All right," I said with a calm smile, as if everything was going according to plan. Everyone turned to me in shock, their eyes wide. "Oh, but can we at least finish the funeral? I'd like to properly send off Abby and Mark. If we leave now, it might look suspicious to the others." "Well, yeah, that's true." I smiled to myself, determined to see the funeral through. Katie pulled at my arm. "Mom, this is fine. I've already prepared the divorce papers." "You were oddly prepared for this." When I presented the divorce papers, Carl gave me a suspicious look but still signed them. I made sure to check his signature carefully before I walked away with Katie. "Mom, are you really okay with this?" "It's fine, actually." I began explaining my plan to Katie, and she smiled, understanding my intentions. At that moment, "Is what you just said true?" Bruce approached us. I explained everything to him as well, and he agreed to help us. "All right, it's going to get busy. I'm ready. I want to repay Grandpa and Grandma too." After the funeral was over, I grabbed the bags I had packed in advance and left the house for good. "Don't bother contacting me," Carl called after me as I left. "I won't. There's no need," I replied, knowing full well he'd be calling me soon enough. The next day, I checked my phone to find a flood of missed calls from Carl. I couldn't help but laugh. Just then, my phone rang, and I picked it up. "What's wrong? Didn't you say not to contact you? This is serious." Ryan showed up out of nowhere and told me to get out of the house. "Oh, you didn't know? That house is a rental. In fact, the real owner of the in-laws' house is Ryan. Carl and I had been paying rent to live there the entire time. But Dad bought this house after working so hard for it when he was young." That's not entirely wrong, but things changed after that. Mark had purchased the house after achieving business success in his younger years. However, when his illness was discovered soon after, he and Ryan came to an agreement. Mark transferred the house to Ryan to prepare for any emergencies, and in return, they were allowed to live there at a low rent. I was told about this right after we got married. "You were there too, Carl. Don't try to pretend you didn't know," Carl muttered. Was I? Abby and Mark were always thorough in explaining things, so there was no way Carl hadn't been informed. "You probably just ignored anything that didn't benefit you. But to kick us out all of a sudden, well, you didn't help at all while Mark was struggling. And you dumped all the caregiving on me." Ryan was furious. Ryan had visited the hospital almost every day when Abby and Mark were admitted. He and I had talked a lot while we took care of their needs together. "That's not all. What's this about Dad's inheritance being almost nothing?" Yes, the inheritance Carl and Serena had been eagerly waiting for. There was nothing to inherit from the start. They had no choice, Carl. Abby and Mark lived in a body that wouldn't cooperate with them. They had expenses to cover. Abby and Mark, not wanting to burden me too much, had outsourced some of their caregiving. Additionally, they had prepared most of what they needed themselves, which meant they barely had any savings left. And above all, they had made one thing clear: "I don't want to leave any inheritance to those ungrateful people," Mark had said, deciding to spend all of their savings. As a result, there was almost nothing left to pass on. "What? That's ridiculous. Are you saying Dad and Mom abandoned us?" "I'm done with this conversation. I'm busy," I said, ignoring Carl's protest of "Wait, I'm not finished," as I hung up the phone. "Was that Dad?" "Yes, as expected. It was about there being no inheritance." "Isn't it way too soon to be asking about the inheritance?" I nodded in agreement. It was astonishing that Carl was already concerned about the inheritance right after the funeral. Ryan must have been equally disgusted. I thought as I recalled my final conversation with Mark. "If anything happens to me, I've left everything in Ryan's hands. You should live freely. Please don't talk about such things. We failed in raising our children. Carl and Serena have betrayed us in the worst way." In truth, Serena's frequent visits to the in-laws' house were due to the debt she had accumulated from gambling. Obsessed with the lottery, She quickly ran out of her salary to cover her expenses, and even pressured Ryan for a raise. Ryan, however, rejected her demands and reported the matter to Mark and Abby. She must have been feeling pretty desperate. Then, was she sabotaging my work for that reason? Jealousy, most likely. Both Carl and Serena had the wrong idea about remote work. Carl thought, it's not a real job, so it can't pay much, while Serena believed, it's unfair that she earns so much while working from home. That's why they were trying to interfere with your remote work. They probably thought you were making easy money, while they were struggling. I was stunned by what Mark told me. There's no such thing as easy work, and though I worked remotely, my days were constantly busy. It's precisely because I worked hard that I earned a good salary. And on top of that, Carl is having an affair. What? According to Mark, Carl was in a relationship with a subordinate at his company. When Abby and Mark were rushed to the hospital, Carl hadn't arrived immediately because he was with his mistress. Apparently, he had also been dumping his work onto other employees so he could spend more time with her. And if that weren't bad enough, he's been giving your savings to Serena. You've got to be kidding. That can't be true. I had a separate bank account from the one where my salary was deposited, a bank account where I kept my savings from before I got married. That account was reserved for Katie's wedding expenses and my own retirement, so I made sure not to touch it. Apparently, someone saw Carl with his mistress. They blackmailed him, demanding money in exchange for their silence. Carl, who had little of his own savings left after spending lavishly on both his living expenses and his mistress, couldn't afford to keep up. He knew that if he touched our shared account, I would notice immediately, so that's why he went after the savings I had put away from my single days. I hadn't made any deposits into that account in years, and it had completely slipped my mind. Carl must have known that and used it. I'm really sorry. Please don't apologize. In fact, I'm grateful you told me. I wasn't sure what to do. As I contemplated, I thanked Mark. I've told Ryan to take back the house as soon as Abby and I are gone. After that, you're free to do as you please. With those words, Mark bid me farewell and passed on to heaven. That was the conversation I had shared with Katie and Bruce at the funeral. I'm going to make him regret it thoroughly from now on. I had already consulted a lawyer about the affair and Carl's misappropriation of my savings. Initially, I thought I might wait and give him a chance to make things right. But after Carl teamed up with Serena to drive me out of the house, I knew I couldn't hold back any longer. I might end up causing you some trouble. It's okay, Mom. I'm strong, and you don't have to hold back anymore. With her approval, I was free to act. I should make a few more calls. To drag Carl and Serena down into hell, I began to take action. Hey, what did you do? 3 days after Carl's call, this time Serena contacted me. This is all you're doing, isn't it? I have no idea what you're talking about. My boyfriend broke up with me. You had something to do with that, didn't you? Apparently, her lawyer boyfriend, with whom she had been discussing marriage, had abruptly ended their relationship. I thought I was set for life with a future husband who's a lawyer. What did you do? For your information, I didn't say anything to him. While we were discussing the situation at the funeral, Bruce had walked by, overheard our conversation, and approached us to ask what was going on. That's how he learned the truth. Thank you for telling me. Here is my business card. At that time, Bruce had given me his business card, and that's when I found out he was a lawyer. Curious, Katie searched his name, and it turned out he was highly accomplished in his field. If I can be of help, please let me know. I gladly accepted his offer and enlisted him to handle the divorce proceedings, including seeking compensation from Carl. But there was one thing Bruce absolutely couldn't stand. When I was a kid, my father's gambling habit caused us a lot of hardship. I've always hated gambling ever since. I told Serena about that when we started dating. Despite this, Serena had become addicted to gambling, racking up debt, and constantly asking Abby, Mark, and Carl for money. Once Bruce learned of this, he ended the relationship. Why did you have to interfere like that? I was serious about marrying him. Serena had been genuinely in love with Bruce. She had pleaded with him not to leave, but he had only said, "It's not going to work," and walked away. "Where are you right now? You need to take responsibility and take care of us." After being kicked out of the apartment she shared with Bruce, and with Ryan reclaiming the in-laws' house, she had nowhere to go. As if I'd tell you. And by the way, you say it's my fault, but isn't all of this your own doing? At the moment, I was staying at Katie's apartment, where she had been living on her own. I planned to live with her for a while until I found a new place. I bet you're staying with that brat Katie, right? And if I am, do you even know where she lives? I can just ask Carl, and he'll tell me. I couldn't help but laugh aloud at her response. "What's so funny?" she asked, clearly confused. Carl doesn't know. He never cared enough to ask, and Katie never told him. Carl had never been involved in the family. Even when it came to Katie's future, his attitude had been dismissive. "Just decide whatever you want. I'll pay if necessary," he said, showing no interest in what Katie wanted. That's why neither Katie or I had ever bothered to share our address with him. Normally, a dad would know. Well, a normal dad doesn't neglect his family while being obsessed with his mistress. Serena fell silent at that. I smiled as I continued. "I've held back for so long. You, constantly interfering with my work. Carl, dumping all the responsibilities on me. But you and your daughter are just so disrespectful. Well, now no one has to hold back anymore. Everyone told me I should stop putting up with it. So now I'm going to return all the stress I've endured. I'm a person who holds grudges. That's why I haven't forgotten a single thing they did to me. I won't show any mercy." As I said in a low voice, Serena's voice trembled as she muttered, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." But I simply smiled and hung up the phone. A month later, "This time, my relatives have caused you quite a bit of trouble," Ryan said, informing me of what had happened to Carl and Serena. A thorough investigation revealed that Mark's accusations about Carl's infidelity were true. As expected, Carl was fired. And it turns out Serena had been using her connection as the CEO's niece to do as she pleased. Serena was given the choice to either resign or be fired. Shocked from being dumped by Bruce, Serena chose to resign voluntarily. Now both Carl and Serena were unemployed and struggling. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, ending the call with Ryan. He had always been kind to me, but I think this will be the last. But I had already decided to sever ties with anyone connected to Carl. "Have you heard from Dad or Serena since then?" "Just once. Carl had sent me a message apologizing, saying, 'I'm truly sorry. Can we try again?' I ignored it and immediately blocked him. They can work hard in their own little hell." I had already collected compensation from Carl through the divorce proceedings. On top of that, I sued his mistress for settlement money, which ultimately caused the two to break up. I didn't expect to be able to sue Serena too, so that was a bonus. Serena had once interrupted one of my remote meetings on purpose, thanks to testimony from my colleague who was in the meeting, and the detailed records I had kept. I was able to sue her for workplace interference. In the end, they had to borrow money to pay the settlements, so I heard they're struggling with debt. "Well, that's the least they deserve," Katie said with a smile, and I nodded in agreement. Rumor had it that Carl and Serena, both deep in debt, were eventually caught by debt collectors and taken to grueling labor jobs. "Now there's nothing to worry about," I thought, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. 5 years later, I no longer worried about Carl and Serena. I had moved out of Katie's apartment and now enjoyed a peaceful life living on my own. My career had flourished, and I was now the head of a department specializing in remote work, which had become a major part of the company. I was living a fulfilling life, but today was particularly special. I wonder what kind of person she'll bring. Today, Katie was bringing her fiancé to visit my apartment for the first time. I had been excited since morning. A person who chooses Katie must be kind. As I waited for Katie and her fiancé, I reflected on the gifts I had received from Abby and Mark. Now it was my turn to pass those gifts to Katie and her future husband. With that thought, I eagerly awaited their arrival.
I always looked down on William, who pushed all the housework and childcare onto me. That William came back from his business trip. He left his cell phone on the sofa and went to take a shower. The ringtone sounded, and when I looked at William's cell phone, I saw a message from a woman. "I know your passcode." Catherine gasped as she opened the message screen. "Let's have a date at the end of next month. It's our 10th anniversary after all." Sean, who was peeking at the cell phone screen with me, said with a bitter look on his face, "I saw him cheating." "What?" "I saw him on the last day of the school trip." The image on the cell phone Sean showed me captured William entering a hotel, snuggling up to a young woman. I was overwhelmed by a feeling of emptiness. I've been betrayed for 10 years. Catherine and Sean looked at me with concern as I sobbed. Eventually, Catherine and Sean expressed their anger. "We'll make him regret it and show him hell. I won't forgive him even if he apologizes deeply." And so, the children's revenge plot began. I'm Misty, a 50-year-old working mother. This year marks the 14th year of my marriage to my husband William. I met William through a matchmaking service. I was attracted to his stable income from working at a large company, but his refreshing aura and bright smile were especially charming. I quit my full-time job after graduating college to accommodate William's wish for me to be home when he gets back from work. However, once we got married, his attitude changed completely. William turned out to be the kind of person who looks down on others and spews verbal abuse with a smile. During our courtship, William narrowed his eyes at a baby in a stroller, saying how cute, and enthusiastically told me, "I want 2 kids. Ideally 1 boy and 1 girl." You're right. It sounds lively and fun. But as if that conversation never happened, William pushed all the baby care onto me just 1 month after giving birth. "I'm still not back to normal after coming back from my parents' house. If you're not good at housework, at least help take care of Sean." Even though I desperately tried to convey this, he brushed me off with an exasperated look. "Why are you being so needy? Taking care of the baby is the mom's job, right? And you're an unemployed housewife, so you should be fine without sleep." "Of course I'm not fine. I'm not fully conscious and every day is hard." "So you want me, who's working, to help out?" "That's ridiculous." William pursed his lips. "I earn a salary and provide for you all. You take perfect care of Sean and the housework. It's only natural that we each fulfill our roles. What are you dissatisfied with?" "Of course, I'm very grateful that you earn a salary. I really appreciate it. But William, you're Sean's dad, right? Bathing him, changing his diapers. Even if it's just on your days off, please take over those things for me." When I appealed to him with teary eyes, William glanced at Sean sleeping in the crib and uttered a shocking line. "I just can't." "What?" "You know, babies are smelly and dirty, right? I'm a neat freak, so I hate getting dirty. I'll hold him at least, though." He dealt another blow to my dumbfounded self. "Also, Misty, you've been looking a bit grimy lately." "Huh?" He told me with an annoyed expression as I frowned. "Your body shape has deteriorated since giving birth, and you've stopped dressing up. Your hair is a mess as you take care of Sean. You don't even look like a woman anymore." "That can't be helped!" I shouted without thinking. "William, you have no idea how hard it is for me every day. Feeding milk every 2 hours day and night, rushing over whenever I hear crying. I put myself second. That's the life I lead. That's just an excuse, right? Actresses and such return to work right after having a baby. They stay beautiful, so recognize your lack of effort. I was at a loss for words when he teasingly said that. Some time passed again. When I expressed anxiety about Sean not eating solid food, William cut me off in one fell swoop. It's because your cooking is bad. What? I put up with it and eat it every day too. Babies are honest. He laughed loudly, and I felt like crying. While pushing all the housework and childcare onto me, William only hurled criticism, and I gradually became exhausted. William also criticized me at every turn, comparing me to other women. Carol next door is always beautiful. Hard to believe she has a high school-aged son. She sets her long hair nicely, it's great. I replied, feeling sick to my stomach at William's dreamy expression. I want to go to the hair salon for the first time in 6 months too. Can you watch Sean? Then William raised his voice. Huh? Why should I? Just for half a day is fine. Hey, you're supposed to make time for yourself. William spoke with a mocking air. Unlike you, I only have weekends off. Are you going to take that away too? Are you going to make me work at home too? I retorted, not backing down. William, you go out alone on your days off and fully enjoy your time off at home playing games. But I don't have any days off, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's to be expected since you're the mom. You're the dad too, you know. And $30 a month for an allowance is way too little. I can't even properly buy cosmetics. William slammed his teacup on the dining table. You should be grateful you even get an allowance while unemployed. You're being cheeky even though I'm supporting you. That's why I decided to manage the household finances. In our house, it's not me, the housewife, but William who manages the household finances. When we got married, I agreed without thinking deeply about it, but I soon regretted it. The thing is, William absolutely never shows me his pay stubs. I properly give you living expenses. What's wrong with me freely using my own salary? When I asked to see the bank book and pay stubs, he would invariably get in a bad mood, so I eventually gave up pursuing it. Even when William was home on his days off, he would only speak to Sean on a whim or play with him to some extent. You could say he was almost indifferent. So while I can't say Sean is attached to William, I felt it would be inconvenient to take his dad away from him, and I couldn't bring myself to divorce. As a housewife with a young child, I of course also anticipated the risks of divorce. The year Sean entered elementary school, I became pregnant with our second child. My love for William had cooled, but I couldn't give up on my dream of wanting 2 children. After experiencing one miscarriage, I was over the moon about the baby I was blessed with. William also wanted a girl, so I had a faint hope that if a girl was born, he might dote on her a little. But with bad timing, right before elementary school summer vacation, William received a transfer order to a regional office. What do you want to do? Are you coming with me? I shook my head. Sean has gotten used to elementary school, and I have mom friends here, so I want to raise the children here. Plus, it's reassuring to have my pregnancy monitored at the hospital that took care of me during the miscarriage. Then William unusually spoke kind words. That's true. It's not just your body alone. William, this is your first time living alone, right? Will you be okay? It's fine. I'll just clean haphazardly, and I'll buy meal delivery services and deli items. I was relieved that William readily agreed. Eventually, our long-awaited baby girl was born. Sean seemed to adore his little sister, who was 7 years younger than him. Even if she scribbled in his homework notebook or broke his treasured toys, he forgave it all with a smile. Catherine also loved her kind brother Sean. At home, she would follow him around and constantly try to imitate him. One time, even though she couldn't read kanji, she peered into the children's book Sean was reading and disrupted his reading. There were also times she would cling to Sean's feet as he helped prepare dinner, making a fuss wanting his attention. Even at times like that, Sean never got angry at Catherine. He would read children's books to her in easy-to-understand sentences or have her help with things she could do, like removing the strings from beans, trying to get along well with her. Taking care of the housework and child-rearing alone was tougher than I imagined, but thanks to Sean willingly watching Catherine, I somehow managed to get through it. Eventually, when Catherine turned 4, I put her in daycare and resumed working part-time. A few years later, William returned after finishing his stint abroad, but in less than half a year, he was assigned to transfer to another location. This time, he was going as the director of a newly established business office. That was fine, but his presence as a dad remained lacking as always. Since she was his long-awaited daughter, every time he came home, he brought snacks and toys and took pictures with her, but that only lasted until Catherine's sense of self sprouted. When she started asserting herself, he openly showed displeasure at Catherine getting attached to Sean and began complaining. "I went out of my way to buy you a picture book, so why are you begging Sean to read it? Come to me. She just really loves Sean, it can't be helped." William clicked his tongue and vented his anger at me. "Isn't it because your discipline is bad, Misty? I bet you're bad-mouthing me to the kids after I leave." Then Catherine, who overheard from the hallway, rushed into the living room and interjected. "That's not true, Dad. Even when you come home, you just play games and don't play with me, right? But Sean plays with me at the park and listens to my stories about daycare. That's why I like Sean more." I was surprised at Catherine expressing her opinion in her innocent way of speaking. As expected of a girl, even though she's still in daycare, she's mature. Beside me, feeling impressed, William, whose dignity as a dad was wounded, retorted with a beet-red face. "Oh, is that so? Well, I hate cheeky brats like you too. Hey, don't talk to a child like that. It's your bad parenting, Misty. It's outrageous for her to defy her dad." William glared at me and Catherine, gathered his things, and returned to his post. Like this, he kept making arrogant remarks every time he opened his mouth, so it could be said it was his own fault that the children disliked him. Even without the children saying it out loud, I could tell from their distant attitude towards William. As soon as William came home, he would always sprawl on the sofa playing games on his cell phone or watching videos and laughing. Both Sean and Catherine would come out of their rooms to match the timing of William's return home. However, when they tried talking to William, they would get brushed off with things like "you're noisy" or "I'm busy, so go away," so recently they stopped trying to talk to him. I always wondered why he came back every month if he had no intention of interacting with his family. But the other day, the reason became clear at a neighborhood association gathering, and I was flabbergasted. "Mr. Collins, you're living alone in Washington, D.C. for work, right? It's admirable that you come home every month to see your children. I bet Sean and Catherine are happy, right? You're a good dad." Huh? Oh, yes. I smiled back ambiguously. I endure it because the neighbors gossip, but what kind of faces would the residents make if I spilled the actual situation? School entrance and graduation ceremonies have nothing to do with me, right? Catherine's piano recital? Sean is participating in an English debate competition? You go. Don't make me use my precious paid leave on that stuff. Even though he's their dad, he goes and says lines like this. The children are growing up to be good kids using William as a negative role model. Catherine, who attends the local elementary school, serves as a class representative, and Sean entered one of the top college prep schools in the state. He inherited William's intelligence and is enrolled in the advanced class. Unlike William, he doesn't show off his smarts or look down on others. He's a kind child who cares about family. The lively and energetic Catherine serves as class rep and has many friends. I'm surprised at how different the siblings' personalities are. In the fall, I purchased a gym bag and a large backpack. They were for Sean to use on his school trip. Dad lives in Georgetown too, right? Maybe I'll run into him somewhere. Even though he doesn't like William, he seemed to look forward to possibly meeting him by chance. Sean, who left in high spirits, looked strangely down when he returned home 4 days later. Even when Catherine asked about the trip, he only gave curt responses. But then, as I was washing dishes after dinner, he tried to talk to me several times, hemming and hawing, but in the end gave up on saying anything. Sean, what's wrong? No, it's nothing. I'm tired, so I'm going to bed. Okay. Good night. Good night. With slumped shoulders, he weakly climbed the stairs and quietly closed his bedroom door. After that, Sean was depressed for a while. When William came home at the end of the month, Sean shut himself in his room with a displeased air and didn't come down even at dinner time. It was rare for the good-natured Sean to act like that. During the meal, I suddenly had an idea and brought it up to William. It must be a hassle to come home by plane, right? Why don't I go to Washington, D.C. sometimes? I can cook for you and tidy up your room. Then William's face changed color. For some reason, he refused in a flustered manner. No, it's fine. You're busy too, right? Don't worry about me. Really? I felt something was off. Before he would always say, husbands should always take care of their wives, and now this? After dinner, while William was taking a shower, his cell phone started ringing, left behind on the sofa. A message popped up on the screen. Casually glancing at it, I gasped in shock. It was a text from a woman. William, I assume you're with your family right now? I miss you so much. Based on the content, she was most likely his mistress. Her name seemed to be Aurora. Catherine, who saw it just like I did, picked up the phone. I know his passcode. Hey, you can't just snoop through someone's phone like that. I scolded her, but Catherine just grinned mischievously. It's fine. Dad takes forever in the shower. That's not the point. That reaction totally proves he's cheating. As Catherine entered the passcode, Sean came downstairs. He peeked at the messaging app with us. When their conversation appeared, Sean's face darkened. He let out a deep sigh. I knew it. Catherine, about to scream, hurriedly covered her mouth. Let's have a date at the end of next month. It's our 10th anniversary after all. We'll have a fancy dinner, stay at a hotel with a great night view, and spend a lazy morning in my room. I'll wear that designer dress you recently bought me. Dad was really cheating on you. Catherine was visibly shocked. Then Sean spoke quietly, a bitter expression on his face. I saw him cheating with my own eyes. What? I spotted them on the last day of my school trip. Sean zoomed in on an image on the phone. My knees nearly gave out from under me. It was a photo of William arm in arm with a young woman, entering a hotel. There's no doubt about it now. It's definitely an affair. On the last day of the school trip, we had free time, remember? While our group was exploring the city, I spotted a couple in the distance entering a hotel. Sean explained with a grim expression on his face. How did you even recognize it was Dad? The age gap between them caught my eye. It was like a parent and child. As I stood there, at a loss for words, Sean apologized regretfully. "I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you as soon as I got home, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it." "No, it's okay. It must have been a terrible experience for you." Thinking about how Sean had been struggling with this alone, I felt a surge of anger towards William. At the same time, an overwhelming sense of emptiness washed over me, as if a gaping hole had opened up in my chest. I let out a dry laugh and spoke quietly. "Haha. It seems like I've been betrayed for 10 years. I guess all I can do now is laugh." "Wait, 10 years? The 10th anniversary mentioned in the message is a celebration of the 10th wedding anniversary." At Sean's explanation, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. 10 years? That means it started when I was still in the womb. And it's been going on ever since? I can't believe it. Unbelievable. I sank into a chair, attempting to keep my tone light but failing miserably. A burning sensation rose in my throat, and large tears began to spill from my eyes. As I sobbed, Catherine and Sean watched me with concern etched on their faces. Crying in front of the children like this was so pathetic. I knew that, but I couldn't control my emotions. When Catherine was in my womb, William had been unusually kind to me. I had convinced myself it was because of a previous miscarriage. But I was wrong. It was simply to ease his guilt over the affair. Sniffling and wiping my tears with the back of my hand, I heard Catherine ask Sean a question. "Sean, you're not planning on letting this slide, are you?" "Of course not." Sean's voice was filled with anger as he replied. Looking up, I saw both Catherine and Sean's faces twisted with rage. "I won't let Dad get away with this any longer. We'll make him see hell and regret it. Yeah. Even if he apologizes deeply, I won't forgive him." My heart swelled with joy. It was inappropriate, but I felt reassured by the siblings teaming up together. I told myself that I couldn't just sit here crying weakly. I needed to be stronger. Sensing William coming out of the bathroom, I fled to the bedroom. If I faced William now, I felt like I would confront him about the affair. Sean and Catherine said they would get revenge, so I couldn't ruin it. "Mom seems to be feeling unwell. Did she eat something weird?" I could hear their exchange from downstairs. After that, William showed no concern for me and returned to Washington, D.C. again. And the next day. The night before the day Aurora referred to as the 10th anniversary in her message, the children and I flew into Washington, D.C. Early the next morning, we checked out of the hotel and waited for William and Aurora in front of Aurora's apartment building. About an hour later, William and Aurora appeared from across the street. Seeing William slovenly grin as he held hands with Aurora filled me with intense disgust. Aurora, dressed in a high-end designer dress, was a beautiful woman. It was surprising that she was being a mistress to a middle-aged man. She was still young and could have her pick of men, which made me question it. The couple, with an age gap like parent and child, stood out in a bad way. It was understandable that Sean had noticed them immediately. William, who had arrived in front of the apartment with a beaming smile, froze when he saw us blocking the entrance. The color visibly drained from his face. "Oh no, this is..." He let go of Aurora's hand and started to stammer an excuse, but couldn't form the words properly. "William, who are they? Acquaintances?" After asking in a nasal voice, Aurora seemed to realize it too. "Don't tell me, your wife and kids? Ugh, I can't believe they came all the way to Washington, D.C. William, giving up on excuses, asked in a hoarse voice. "How did you know about this place?" "I saw you and Dad going into a hotel during the school trip." I waited for you to come out and followed you, which led me to this apartment building. Sean explained with a grim expression. So we know everything. It's pointless to make excuses now, Dad. Anyway, let's not chat out here. Let's go to Aurora's room. As soon as I urged them, William and Aurora flared up in anger. I bet Misty put them up to this. What kind of mother makes her kids do something like this? Why should we let you into the room too? Let's go, William. As William and Aurora started walking away again, I raised my voice and spoke to their backs. Look who's talking, someone with not a shred of fatherly decency. You know what, Aurora? I can make a scene here. How you guys are cheating. Just then, people who seemed to be residents emerged from the apartment entrance. Judging by how they nodded to Aurora, they appeared to be acquaintances. Aurora glared at me resentfully and headed swiftly towards the apartment entrance. Even when the children and I accompanied her, she didn't shut us out and let us ride the elevator together. Sean and Catherine gave me a thumbs up, mouthing "nice job." I nodded and returned the same gesture. When we entered the apartment, there were mugs and bowls lined up in the cupboard that seemed to be for male use. William's toothbrush and razor were likely placed in the bathroom too. Sitting on the living room sofa, I spread out the investigation report I received from the private detective on the table. Seeing it, William said in an exasperated tone, "You even hired a private detective?" "That's right. Thanks to that, I found out something interesting." I smiled at William and Aurora. "You two have been having an affair for the past 10 years, right?" "That's right. And you even have a child together?" William hesitated for a moment, but then readily admitted, "Yeah, we do." "Are you paying child support?" "Of course I am. As a father, I have to take responsibility." I felt the urge to throw my cup of coffee right in William's smug face. How dare he say such things when he's barely had any contact with Sean and Catherine? "But Aurora, you don't have any desire to get married, do you?" Asked curiously, Aurora looks up at William. "I'm already so blessed, just being with you, William. I don't care about titles or status. You know that you're the most important thing to me." "Ah, that's what I love about you, Aurora." William pulled Aurora close and nuzzled her head affectionately, ignoring the disgusted looks on Sean, Catherine, and me. Yeah. But William isn't your number one, is he?" "Well, my daughter is just as important to me." "Not her, I meant this person." "You married him because you love him, right?" Aurora froze, still smiling. I laid out several photos on the table. In front of a stately house, Aurora handed a black attaché case to a bespectacled man in a suit. There was also a photo of the man kneeling down, gently speaking to a young girl. The composition made it clear these were all secretly taken photos. "Huh? Who's this guy?" William tilted his head quizzically as I explained. "Aurora's husband." "What? Huh? Oh, you didn't know?" Aurora got married 5 years ago. William stared at Aurora, dumbfounded. Wait a minute. You're joking, right, Aurora?" Aurora averted her eyes in discomfort as William was at a loss for words. I skimmed through the investigation files on Aurora and concisely relayed the key points. "I see. Her husband works for a famous international company. He was stationed in the UK before, and now he's at the German headquarters. Impressive." "Whoa, an elite! So cool!" Catherine chimed in. "She stayed in the US to enroll her daughter in a private preschool. That's the official reason, but the real reason was to keep seeing you, William. Lucky you, Aurora clearly cherishes you." William glared at me resentfully, his mouth opening and closing but unable to form words. He seemed incredibly shocked to learn Aurora already had a husband. "You opened a nail salon in your house? Isn't that just a rich housewife's hobby?" That's not true." Aurora got defensive. "I mean, anyone can easily open a home salon if they have the startup funds. Being a nail technician doesn't require a national license, after all." Catherine and Sean followed the script we'd planned, trying to back Aurora into a corner and make her slip up. "Oh right, I heard at first some neighborhood housewives and mom friends would come, but your skills were subpar, so you got a bad reputation. Now it's practically closed down." "Poor thing. How rude. My sales aren't great, but I do still get customers sometimes." Aurora didn't notice William's expression becoming more and more grim beside her. "Aurora, is it true that you're married?" Aurora flinched slightly at William's harsh tone as she turned to face him, but quickly switched to a wheedling voice. "I'm so sorry, William. I'm sorry for keeping it from you until now. But my feelings for you are genuine, I swear. But Aurora..." "Ooh, look! Little Aurora is so cute." "Shut up! Be quiet for a bit." Sean, Catherine, and I peered at the photo of Aurora's daughter, gushing exaggeratedly. "Look, she's the spitting image of Aurora's hubby, isn't she?" "You're right. Little Aurora takes after her daddy." William's eyes went wide. He snatched the photo we'd been looking at and stared intensely, his body starting to tremble. It was no wonder. In the photo of Aurora's husband and daughter together, looking so close, the two looked like twins. "My husband and William look really similar. That's why my daughter looks just like my husband too." Aurora started spouting nonsensical excuses as the kids and I burst out laughing. Aurora's husband was fair-skinned and slender with a kind face. In contrast, William had strong, chiseled features with tanned, muscular skin. It would be harder to find any similarities between the two. "Just admit it already. She's your husband's child, not William's." I held back laughter as I said it. Beside Aurora, William muttered in a dark voice, head still hanging low. "So I've been paying $800 a month in child support for someone else's kid?" $800 is double the normal amount. That's so like William, always having to show off. He probably smugly agreed to that absurdly high amount. He must have assumed he could get away with deceiving me since he controlled the finances. With an agonized expression, William continued. "The same goes for the rent for this apartment. I paid for my daughter's volleyball classes, clothes, and the latest game console. I was told that the reason I don't get to see my daughter much is because you usually leave her at your parents' house, so I felt like I had no choice. I was convinced." William's face turned beet red, the flush extending down to his neck. "So all that money was wasted on some ridiculous nail salon startup?" His booming voice made Aurora flinch momentarily, but she quickly retorted. "What's wrong with taking money from a rich guy? Pursuing your dreams costs money. It can't be helped." Eyes narrowed and voice raised, her demeanor was a far cry from the woman who had been cozying up to William just moments ago. Sneering at William's shocked expression, Aurora brazenly admitted. "That's right. I was bored while my husband was stationed overseas, so I figured I'd have some fun with William after meeting him at the bar. He bragged about being some hotshot elite despite making less than my husband, so I thought I'd milk him for all he was worth." William's face crumpled into utter despair as she spoke. "My husband returned from the UK but then took off to Germany right after finding out I was pregnant. I told William as a test and he was over the moon about it. Weird, right? Considering he already has a daughter." I nodded in disgusted agreement at Aurora's mocking laughter. The type to celebrate having a kid but then do none of the actual childcare. Oh, an international businessman. Your husband must be like super smart. Catherine chimed in with naive enthusiasm. Aurora flashed her a smug, victorious smile. Well, sure. But William makes good money too, doesn't he? He gave me quite a lot, after all. The kids and I exchanged glances before looking over at William, who guiltily avoided our gaze. I mean, he does make a decent salary, but... Dad's drowning in debt, Catherine interjected bluntly. Aurora's eyes widened in surprise. Huh? William took out loan after loan to fund your lifestyle. I explained matter-of-factly. His savings are long gone and his credit cards are maxed out on revolving payments. Most of his paycheck these days goes to paying down his debts. Aurora tilted her head quizzically. So then how are you getting by now? On my salary. Now it was William's turn to look shocked. What? But you only work part-time for peanuts, right? Did you forget? I told you I was going full-time once Catherine started elementary school. I'm a branch manager now. I earn about the same salary as you, a section manager. What? Isn't William a director? Misty asked, surprised. You think this man is capable of being a director at the head office? I retorted. The children nodded in agreement, leaving William looking resentful but unable to argue against the truth. Aurora pressed her temples, her confusion apparent. Well then, the story about owning land is also doubtful. Is your only asset the house? That house is in my name. It's an asset I inherited from my parents. William doesn't even pay the property taxes. As the facts were exposed one after another, Aurora seemed completely disillusioned. So he doesn't have much money after all. Then I don't want him. She stared coldly at William, her words sharp. I'm returning him to you, Misty. I don't want him either. And even if you return him now, it doesn't erase the crime of breaking up someone's family. Yeah. I just have to pay compensation for the divorce lawsuit, right? Aurora said, looking bored as she ran her fingers through her long hair. There was no sign of remorse at all. Watching this, Sean fiddled with his mobile phone for a bit before calling someone. Thank you for waiting. Please come in. Soon, the doorbell rang. Aurora, who had gone to answer it, let out a scream-like voice. Hey, Kevin? Why are you in America? I heard everything from Sean. Can you let me in? Aurora must have realized that she had no chance of winning even if she resisted. She unlocked the autolock and after a while, let the man who had arrived at the front of the room inside. It seemed to be Kevin, Aurora's husband, who was in the photos with Aurora and their daughter. William trembled under Kevin's quiet intimidation. Kevin gave Aurora and William a cold look and spoke in a calm voice. I heard your conversation through Sean's mobile phone. Do either of you have an explanation? I didn't know Aurora was married. William spoke in a fading voice, and Kevin nodded. It seems so. Therefore, we won't demand compensation from William for the divorce lawsuit. William breathed a sigh of relief. Aurora remained silent beside him, looking dissatisfied. I had suspected an affair for a while. The other day, before returning home, I tracked down this apartment and was wandering around the entrance when I met Sean in his school uniform. Kevin thought I got lost during the school trip and started talking to me. When I told him that Dad's mistress lived here and talked in detail, we were surprised to find out we had the same goal. Kevin took over the rest of the story. Sean asked me to wait before barging in because he wanted revenge on his dad. He wanted me to tell him about Aurora, so he and I split the cost and hired a private investigator to conduct a background check on her. Yes, with Kevin as an ally, Sean was able to afford to hire a private investigator. The background check was expensive, and his allowance alone wasn't enough to cover the cost. I also wanted to know what had happened while I was away from the States. So I pretended to return to Germany but stayed here and kept in touch with Sean. Of course, Catherine and I had also heard the story from Sean. We planned to appear at the end to deal the final blow to Aurora. As expected, Aurora turned pale and held her head in her hands. "Aurora, let's get a divorce. I'll take custody of our daughter. If you love money that much, you can remarry some company president. I'm already 30 years old. Remarriage will be difficult. And how am I supposed to live without your salary?" She clung to Kevin, looking as if she might cry at any moment. Kevin gently removed Aurora's hands and spat out his words. "You'll have to work hard. A life of fawning over men and squeezing money out of them won't last anyway." He turned to face me, Sean, and Catherine, and bowed deeply. "I apologize for the trouble Aurora has caused you." "Oh, no, not at all," I said hurriedly, bowing my head and urging the children. "You three probably have a lot to discuss, so we'll be leaving." "Yeah, let's go," Sean agreed. As we got ready to leave, William, who had followed us to the entrance, offered a deep apology. "Misty, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me and don't divorce me." "Why don't you want a divorce?" Catherine asked, looking puzzled. "He probably wants me to take over paying his debts instead of him." William's cheeks stiffened instantly. It seemed I had hit the nail on the head. "Are you stupid? What do you think Mom is?" Catherine scolded William harshly. "I don't need a dad like this. I'm cutting ties with you." "I agree. It's too late for a deep apology now. I won't forgive you." Sean spat out angrily. "I'll send the divorce papers to your company housing tomorrow. Make sure to submit them to the city office." "No way." "Hey, wait." William pleaded, his face streaked with tears as we shut the door on him. According to what I heard from Sean, Kevin did as he declared and slapped Aurora with the divorce papers. Of course, he also demanded compensation for the divorce lawsuit and won custody of their young daughter. Kicked out of their grand mansion, Aurora tearfully turned to her parents for help, but they were furious. For the time being, she borrowed money from her parents to pay the compensation to Kevin and me in a lump sum. Now, to pay her parents back, she's working part-time jobs day and night without rest. As for William, even after I sent the divorce papers to his company housing in Washington, D.C., he kept refusing to submit them to the city office. Apparently, he was seriously expecting me to take over paying his debts for him. When I messaged him to submit the papers quickly, I got a flurry of replies. "Please reconsider the divorce. You need me, don't you? You'll regret leaving me." He was so persistent that I had my lawyer tell him, "If you keep delaying, we'll take this to court." Finally, he seemed to give up. William submitted the divorce papers and transferred the compensation to my account. While he kept the reason for the divorce confidential at work, he let it slip to a close colleague, and it quickly spread throughout the company. Feeling uncomfortable, he quit his job and is now making a living with part-time work. Cut off by me and the children, he's working hard every day just to pay off his massive debts. Colleagues say he's complained that there's no joy in living anymore. Now that I'm free of William, I feel much lighter. Sean, Catherine and I are having busy but fulfilling days. Through this incident, I learned that the easygoing Sean has surprising initiative. And the eloquent Catherine showed me what a kind, mom-loving child she is. From now on, I want to protect my precious children and live happily together with them.
I'm getting married, so I want you to give me Lily and the kids' bedroom.
That's right. You guys can just go live on the streets for all I care. You're not even family anyway. My husband's family mocked me, holding me up as a laughingstock. For some inexplicable reason, even my husband Isaac joined in on ridiculing me. Isaac always does whatever his parents tell him to. He doesn't give a damn about me at all. So that's it, I'm done with them. I'm cutting ties with this wretched family myself. But before I do, there are a whole lot of things I'm going to do to make you all pay. You're the ones who are going to lose everything and bawl your eyes out. Go to hell. My name is Lily. I'm a 46-year-old woman with an insatiable sweet tooth who always stocks up on pink confections when spring rolls around. Whenever I'm stressed out, indulging in some sugary treats really soothes my nerves. These days, a little dessert is all it takes to put my mind at ease, but there was a time in my life when I just couldn't find any outlet for my stress. It was back when I was in my 30s. I was agonizing over my husband Isaac's family situation. You see, I simply did not get along with Isaac's family. On the surface, we put on a friendly act, but our values clashed so violently that I had to bend over backwards to avoid confrontation. Why couldn't we see eye to eye, you ask? My sister-in-law Violet couldn't hold down a job to save her life. On top of that, she was a total mess when it came to men, and my mother-in-law Roseanne wouldn't even try to keep her in check. Far from it. Oh, that girl is just fine the way she is. She coddled her, saying. At the time, Isaac and I had been married for about 5 years, but in all that time, Violet had only managed to stay employed for 2.5 years at most. Even at family gatherings, she was unemployed, and despite the whole we're family thing, the first time I met her, she greeted me with a casual, "Hey!" No honorifics or anything. I was floored. I'd heard she'd just quit her previous job, so I figured she must have been in the middle of a job search, but after that, she still couldn't manage to keep a part-time gig for long. Her reasons for leaving were always because she got canned for stuff like slacking off at work or chronic lateness. If not that, then she often got pushed out by her coworkers until she had no choice but to quit. She never showed a shred of remorse for her behavior. Well, I can always just mooch off my parents for money. Breezily remarking. She was a NEET at best, a parasite at worst. She was a total train wreck with men too. Some of her exes and past flings would come barging into her parents' house in droves to get into brawls over her. Not like they were fighting over who was her main squeeze or anything. No, every last one of them was there to demand she pay back money she'd borrowed, or accuse her of scamming them or other sordid reasons. You wouldn't see drama this squalid even in a soap opera that sells itself on scandalous plot lines. You'd think her parents would at least try to rein in her wild behavior, but Roseanne spoiled her youngest daughter rotten despite the huge age gap between her and my husband. As someone who watched my own mother work herself to death after finally divorcing my debt-ridden father who made her life a living hell, I found her entitled attitude absolutely repulsive. I wanted to shout at her to grow the hell up and stop mooching off mommy and daddy, but as her brother's wife, I was still an outsider at the end of the day. It wasn't my place to raise my voice about it. For now, her antics weren't directly impacting me and my husband, and even if it was his family, I was still a guest in their home. I'd resolved to bite my tongue and stay out of it, but then... So, we were thinking of moving in with you and Isaac. Huh? Roseanne dropped that little bombshell on me with zero warning when we were visiting for the holidays. Apparently, the used house they'd bought ages ago was falling apart and starting to tilt. She thought that made it the perfect time for all of us to move in together, either in their house or ours. Perfect time for who exactly? No matter how you slice it, to me, a person who had zero desire to live under the same roof as this family, it was nothing short of terrible news. A two-family home? Absolutely not. Living together? I would refuse even if my life depended on it. That's how strongly I felt, but I knew if I rejected the idea too bluntly, I'd catch hell for it.
Well, Isaac and I do need our alone time too.
So I deflected with a gentle. But Isaac had this tendency to be totally subservient to Roseanne, and when she told him, "Your father and I aren't getting any younger. We want you kids close by," he couldn't muster up any rebuttal. Worse still, he gradually started getting,
"I guess realistically speaking, living together makes the most sense in the long run."
Swept along by his parents' opinion, musing, "For crying out loud, grow a spine and turn them down." Naturally, living with my in-laws also meant getting saddled with that good-for-nothing daughter of theirs as a bonus. What a steal. Yeah, right. Why not try it out for a while? If you end up hating the arrangement, your father and I can always find our own place. I really think now is the perfect time, with our current house being so run down and all. Roseanne insisted. Once we start this so-called trial run of cohabitation, that's it. There would be no going back. We'd be stuck living with them forever. In my mind, it was inconceivable that people who already owned a house would propose moving in with someone else. Even Isaac was starting to cave, muttering a half-hearted, "I guess so." So I spoke up.
"With all due respect, if we were to live together or buy a two-family home, how would we handle the purchase costs? What about living expenses? I'm just not comfortable moving in together unless we clearly lay out those details."
The minute those words left my mouth, Roseanne's face soured. "We're living on a fixed income, so we can't afford to pay much," she huffed. "Right, I get that. But Violet is unemployed at the moment, and you're stretching your pensions to cover her insurance premiums and resident taxes too, aren't you? If Violet got a job, wouldn't that change your financial situation at least a little?"
What are you implying? You're basically saying Violet needs to work to pay her share of the bills?
Well, to put it bluntly, yes. Just as the atmosphere between Roseanne and I started to grow tense.
Now,
Isaac interjected with a flustered. I shuddered to think how ugly things might have gotten if Violet had actually been present for this conversation. Luckily, she was out gallivanting with whichever boyfriend she was on now. I bet it never even crossed her mind that we were arguing about her behind her back. Desperate to alleviate the suffocating tension, my father-in-law Arnold piped up.
"I've got some retirement money and savings too."
Isaac quickly chimed in. "Yeah, I'm bringing in a decent income myself. Agree with that." Everyone except me was dead set on this shared living space becoming a reality in the near future. In fact, reading the room, it seemed all but set in stone that we'd be living together. With my in-laws and Isaac getting carried away planning as they saw fit, I couldn't get a word in edgewise. By the end of the day, the decision to move in together had been made without my input. I chose to tentatively believe Isaac's assurances that I wouldn't be inconvenienced in the slightest, but I knew that was impossible as long as Violet and Roseanne were in the picture. All I could do was pray that this didn't blow up in our faces and resign myself to the inevitable. I loved Isaac. But watching him cave so easily to his parents' demands filled me with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to be understanding, knowing his folks were important to him. Another part of me was just exasperated by how spineless he was being. Right on the heels of this mess, another crisis reared its ugly head. "Lily, I'm so sorry," Isaac said, bowing his head to me in apology. Oh God, what now? Did he cheat on me or something? No, surely not. Isaac wasn't that kind of man.
What's going on? This is so out of the blue.
When asked, I got a notice at work today. The company is going under.
What?
It was the first time a single sentence had ever caused my mind to go completely blank from shock. The company was going bankrupt? Please tell me this is some sick joke.
What do you mean?
You know things haven't been good since the new CEO took over. Apparently, the employees who joined in the last few years have had to deal with unpaid wages and bonus cuts. Isaac's company was by no means small. It was mid-sized, but fairly successful as far as mid-sized companies go.
Still, isn't this way too sudden? There weren't any red flags?
Sounds like the CEO ran off with the company's money. The decision to shut down was made by his wife and the former CEO. They didn't give us the full story, but I'm guessing things must have gotten bad enough that restructuring wasn't an option anymore. I heard that the CEO's wife was also considering divorcing him over this matter, and it seemed like not only financial issues but also family turmoil were at play. Well, I guess there's nothing we can do if the company's going under. I'm working and have savings, so why don't you start looking for a new job?
No.
Isaac cast his eyes downward guiltily. His gloomy expression gave me a bad feeling, so I asked him straight out.
Don't tell me there's still more problems?
After a moment of silence,
Actually,
Isaac said. It turned out that Isaac had secretly co-signed a loan for one of his colleagues at work. Shut up on me the fact too. The colleague had just had a baby. And with the company's continued failure to pay salaries, bonuses being cut, being unable to pay his mortgage and student loans, he was drowning in debt through no fault of his own. Not wanting to burden his wife, he couldn't tell her about the company's situation, so he borrowed money from a predatory lender and asked Isaac to be his guarantor. That story alone was enough to bring tears to my eyes, but in the end, the colleague fled, leaving Isaac saddled with the debt. This had already happened about 2 months ago, but Isaac naively thought it would be fine since he still had a job and was getting paid properly. I couldn't help but bury my face in my hands. I never thought things would turn out this way, Isaac said dejectedly. I wanted to rebuke him for being so short-sighted, but I didn't even have the energy to speak.
What are we going to do about the house you were going to live in with Roseanne and the others? Didn't you say you were going to sign the mortgage contract this weekend?
I'm really sorry. Please, can't you put the house in your name? I'm worried I might not pass the screening with my debt.
That's not the issue. Shouldn't you be deciding not to buy it at all? We looked at so many places, and we couldn't find any with conditions as good as the one we've set our sights on in terms of price and location. If we try to find a similar house, there's a chance my mom and the others might temporarily not have a place to live.
It's true that physically, it would be impossible for this family to live with us in our current small home. And with his family already having a set date to move out of their current place, I could see some truth to what he was saying. But I just couldn't accept it. At the very least, let's tell Roseanne and the others that you lost your job. I think we need to reconsider the whole idea of living together.
Well,
you don't want to tell your parents because you feel inadequate? Do you really think you can afford to say that in this situation? Isaac fell silent at my question, his eyes cast downward as he contemplated the situation we found ourselves in. I understand. I'll talk to Roseanne and the others about it.
No, I'll tell them. It'll be fine. I'll talk to them properly,
Isaac said, placing his hand on my shoulder, trying to convince me somehow.
Really?
I asked in return.
Yeah,
he answered with conviction. But a few days later, Isaac, who had supposedly told Roseanne and the others about his job loss, confided in me.
If they say they won't let us move in with them now, we'll be in trouble too. We don't have the money to pay the mortgage either.
He said they had lashed out at him. Well, to be honest, I had a feeling they would react that way. I couldn't even imagine him standing up to his parents, and hearing the excuses I expected in the worst way possible made me feel like my love for him was fading, even after being together for 100 years. Given the situation, I wish he would try a little harder. In the end, I bought the house in my name and will be making the mortgage payments for the time being. Once Isaac finds a job and pays off the loan, he'll pay me back in monthly installments to my account. At this rate, I'll probably end up covering not only the house but our living expenses as well. I don't know how much debt Isaac has, but it's money he borrowed to support a family for several months. There's no way his unemployment benefits alone can pay it all back. How long this situation will last depends on when he finds a new job. Should I get a divorce? But I can't bring myself to abandon him after he lost his job. I tried to convince myself that this must be one of the trials married couples face. In the end, at that time, there was still a part of me that couldn't completely hate the naive Isaac. Since I married this man, I also had the desire as a wife to stand by him until the very end. Looking back, I was too soft-hearted. After discussing it as a couple, it was decided that I would also cover our living expenses until Isaac paid off his debt of over $70,000, far exceeding my expectations. Honestly, I wondered if that female junior really used the $70,000 for living expenses and childbirth costs. But even if I found out, it's too late now. The fact remains that we have a large amount of debt, and all I could do was seriously consider what to do going forward. It was right in the middle of a recession, so finding a new job for him in his 30s was a struggle. Isaac, who had been involved in manufacturing auto parts, didn't have universally applicable skills like being good at sales or desk work. Even if he tried to find a job in a similar industry, there was high demand for young talent, and hardly any companies were looking for someone his age, who was neither here nor there. So-called black companies would probably hire him in a heartbeat, though. And so, even after his unemployment benefits ran out, he remained jobless and we began living with my parents. I did tell my in-laws that he had lost his job. By doing so, I was hoping that the family would realize, even a little, that they shouldn't rely entirely on this married couple. For about 3 months after we moved in, my parents gave us $200 for living expenses. Are they looking down on us? They hardly help with any housework and just dump it all on me. When I complained about this to Isaac, "My parents are elderly, so please support them as much as you can," he said. I thought support meant assisting someone who can already do things on their own to some extent. But Arnold, Roseanne, and Violet just lie around on the sofa doing nothing. They should be able to do everything themselves, but there's nothing I can really call support. Should I just drop everything from housework to everything else and take care of them while they're bedridden? I wanted to get along as well as possible since we were living together, but I quickly reached my limit with that idea. I found myself getting irritated almost every day, to the point where I boldly,
"Could you increase our living expenses a little more?"
asked my parents directly. But when I got assertive, my parents got just as assertive back.
"Our generation gets very little pension money.
And
we need $200,000 for our retirement."
Even when I told them to make Violet work,
"We don't want to selfishly tie down our child's life as parents."
they said things like, "Making Violet work isn't selfish of the parents. Working is every citizen's duty in the first place. I started to feel like I couldn't take this lifestyle anymore, and gradually my feelings for Isaac cooled as well. Since we started living together, I often wondered whose side he was really on. Just when I thought he was on my side, with a single word from Roseanne.
Well, I suppose that way of thinking is important too.
He'd easily turn his back on me, saying, "In the end, please just listen to what my parents say." He'd convince me. What happened to his promise not to cause me any trouble at all when we decided to live together? Living with Violet was an unbearable torment for me. On the rare weekday off when I was trying to relax at home, Violet would bring her boyfriend over and start getting all lovey-dovey in her room. I guess she's free to do whatever she wants in her own room, but I wish she'd show a little consideration for the people she lives with. It's my own home, but I can't relax at all. As the restless days went on, one evening at dinner.
Hey, listen to this.
Violet's cheerful voice rang out. It was rare for her to even have dinner with us in the first place. She was usually out on a date with her boyfriend at this time. I wondered what was up, and then,
"I'm getting married!"
She suddenly spread out a signed marriage certificate for us to see. Even our parents were momentarily stunned.
"What? To who?"
they asked.
"My current boyfriend,"
she replied, but her boyfriends change so frequently, who knows which one she means. It seemed to be news to our parents too.
"How long have you been dating?"
And they asked her various questions like,
"About 3 months. I felt it was destiny."
She laughed. Isaac and I exchanged glances, wondering if this was really okay. I could only imagine it ending in divorce. But our parents seemed to have unfounded confidence, saying things like, "If it's someone Violet chose, I'm sure it'll be fine," and readily agreeing to be witnesses.
"Hey, so I want to have my hubby live here with us too. But my room is kind of too cramped, you know?"
"I see." Roseanne agreed with Violet for some reason. Her attitude of readily accepting Violet and her husband moving in irritated me to no end. "Can't we have Lily in Isaac's room?"
"Huh?"
At Violet's suggestion, Isaac grimaced. He looked at me as if to say, "That's not okay, right?" No, of course it's not okay. I couldn't understand why he would hesitate there. I wanted him to refuse right away.
"Come on, please,"
Violet pleaded, and, "Do as she says." Our parents chimed in. I lost my patience and sharply refused.
"That's going too far, even for you."
To which Violet replied in a wheedling voice. Then, "What? You won't celebrate my marriage, sis?" She called me sis, even though she never does normally.
"I know, you should switch rooms. Let the newlyweds have the bigger room. Isaac can sleep alone in Violet's small room, and you, his wife, can sleep in the kitchen or something. You're an outsider after all."
Roseanne laughed as if it was a brilliant idea. Arnold guffawed. "That's a good one." It was mean-spirited even as a joke. Isaac seemed to get caught up in the mood too, and laughed along.
"Ha ha."
With his parents. This was the worst.
"The kitchen isn't even a room."
Violet howled with laughter.
"Who cares? She's always doing chores and practically lives in the kitchen anyway."
As she said,
"That's true. I mean, there's no more rooms, so the outsider should just leave."
At Violet's words, our parents nodded vigorously. "Exactly," they said gleefully. Faced with his family getting abnormally excited, Isaac made no move to stop them. In other words, I had no allies.
"Go on, outsider, get out."
Violet dismissively waved me off with her hand. Roseanne chimed in. Why don't you just go be homeless in the park? With a laugh. They were all mocking me.
Do you understand? As you know, Isaac is unemployed. Do you realize what will happen to you all if I leave? Life will get tough, you know?
When I asked,
Isaac has savings, and once he finds a job it'll just be a temporary problem.
Roseanne said, by the way, this family doesn't know that he is still saddled with a loan. We kept it a secret because Isaac absolutely refused to talk about it. For whatever reason, he seems to think they'll be appalled if they find out about the loan.
How can you even say that? Have you forgotten that I'm the one who bought this house? What kind of nonsense are you spouting?
I was taken aback for a moment seeing the smug look on her face, but she genuinely seemed to have no idea what I was talking about. I couldn't help but shoot a sharp glance at him, who averted his gaze with a pale face. That gesture made everything click into place. This bastard has been pretending he bought the house himself. In other words, this family has no idea that I bought this house and have been covering everyone's living expenses. They're lounging around obliviously while being supported by me. Just like the emperor with no clothes. Well, this has turned into quite the interesting situation, hasn't it? I held out a sliver of hope that Isaac's last shred of conscience would make him confess he doesn't actually have any savings, but that doesn't seem likely either. Enough of this. They all deserve a harsh dose of reality for once.
That's just fine. I'll go be a homeless person in the park or whatever. Living with you all is far more painful anyway.
I spat out those words and locked myself in the bedroom. Roseanne said,
pretending you're going to leave, but then just holing up in your room, how pathetic.
She seemed to be laughing at me, but I had my reasons for not leaving the house right away. A week later, I packed my things and left that house. I had found an apartment to live in by myself and was fully prepared. Then 2 days after leaving, my in-laws and Isaac showed up at my apartment.
What is the meaning of this?
Roseanne raised her voice. In her hand was the divorce papers I had left at the house. Apparently they had tracked down where I was staying based on the note I left saying I would mail the divorce papers.
The meaning of what, exactly?
I asked with a smile.
A recycling company just came and said they're taking the fridge and TV and everything. This is your doing, isn't it? Well, of course. I left divorce papers and moved out of that house. Why would I leave my belongings in a house I'm not returning to? Did you not know? That fridge, TV, washing machine, even the couch you all lounge around on, I bought it all with my own money. Your own money, how high and mighty. Assets during a marriage are jointly owned with Isaac. Meaning those are Isaac's things too. Where do you get off selling them without permission?
Roseanne was pontificating while Isaac shrank behind her with a pale face. He still hasn't told them anything, has he? Ah, how was I ever in love with a man like this until recently? Now that my feelings have cooled, he seems like such a pathetically small man.
I'm sorry, but those furnishings were bought entirely with my own money. I purchased them using savings from before we got married. What? And while we're at it, I'm not just selling the furniture. I'm in the process of selling that house too. You're what? Huh. I'm sorry.
Violet and Isaac looked at each other in shock, their faces going blank.
The house is in Isaac's name, isn't it? He must be paying the mortgage. I bought it with my savings.
All at once.
I just let Isaac think it was a mortgage while the furniture came from savings.
At my words,
why would you lie about that?
Isaac asked.
I have to support my unemployed husband Isaac and his family. I thought it would be easier to just buy a house outright with my savings rather than making monthly loan payments. And this way, I'll be prepared in case Roseanne and the others try to mistreat me like this. I'm glad I took preemptive measures. Did you really think I'd agree to live with you all without a plan?
After saying that,
Oh, I guess that's too much to expect from people who think $200 is enough for 3 adults to live on for a month.
I laughed.
I have an acquaintance who works as a real estate agent, and another acquaintance who wants to become a landlord, so I've contacted them and we're moving forward with the discussion. We haven't hired a real estate agent yet. You didn't notice, did you?
As I chuckled, my in-laws began to realize the severity of the situation, visibly turning pale. Arnold grabbed Isaac by the collar.
Why didn't you tell me?
He shouted angrily. Isaac, on the verge of tears, "I'm sorry," could only mutter. He's still so weak against his parents. I'm glad I filled out those divorce papers.
What? How am I supposed to get married then?
Violet asked innocently, leaving Roseanne and Isaac at a loss for words. They clearly had bigger problems to deal with. Of course they did. No house, no belongings, and 2 unemployed adult children on their hands. Now that their walking ATM, was out of the picture, the reality that they'd have to make do with a meager pension and less than $200,000 in retirement funds was naturally shocking. Roseanne looked at Violet.
Will your future husband make good money, at least?
She asked, dead serious.
Violet replied. He said he makes money from slot machines. He's a professional slots player.
I burst out laughing while Isaac and my in-laws looked gloomy. Seriously, a professional slots player? I know a handful of people like that exist, but it's not a stable career. And knowing the kind of men she attracts, I'm sure he's no prize. Roseanne and Isaac turned to me.
Look, we apologize for the other day. Can't we get along? I think there were some misunderstandings on both sides,
they said, trying to reconcile. Ha! There were no misunderstandings. We've had completely different values from the start. What are you even talking about? I laughed heartily, but Roseanne snapped back.
Don't say that. There must have been a misunderstanding.
I denied it.
You'd abandon your own family?
Arnold glared at me sternly. But when I retorted with,
wasn't it your wife who first called me an outsider?
Arnold fell silent.
Wait, that's too cold. After we lived together and everything.
Roseanne cried out.
Yes, we lived together while I supported you all. That's exactly why I don't want to anymore.
At my words,
please reconsider,
Isaac pleaded.
If you had been a bit more understanding, maybe I would have. But it's too late now. I'm sick of it.
I laughed off his request. Then,
don't say that. Every family goes through hard times,
Roseanne insisted desperately. Violet chimed in.
That's right.
Trying to gain my support somehow.
Hard times, huh? If that's what you want to call it, why don't you go be homeless in the park? Leave me, an outsider, out of it and overcome this hard time as a family.
They flushed red at having their own words thrown back at them.
You heartless woman,
they cursed.
Oh, is that so? Can you even get by without me though?
They bit their lips, silent at my question. I secretly felt a bit smug.
And after she finally found someone to marry?
Violet hung her head. How awful, after everything. Roseanne hugged her. Well, if you had raised Violet to be independent with a proper job, this wouldn't have happened. They're so naive and short-sighted. Come to think of it, Isaac, who co-signed loans for his juniors and clung to a nearly bankrupt company, was a lot like them in that sense. I see. I realized that their naivety must come from their maternal bloodline. Well, I don't think you need to worry about that though, I said, leaving his family dumbfounded. Seeing their confused expressions, I continued. Because I think Violet's husband probably has other girlfriends.
What?
Violet exclaimed in shock. I had to hold back another laugh.
What do you mean, probably?
She demanded. Your boyfriends change so often that I don't know which one you're marrying, but the last guy I saw you with seems to be dating the woman living downstairs in this apartment building.
Huh?
I had noticed by chance on the day I moved in. The man Violet had been bringing to the house until recently, presumably her fiancé, appeared to be in a relationship with the woman living downstairs. He was frequently coming and going. Given that he arrived at night and left in the morning, they had to be more than just friends. At best, they could be siblings, I suppose, but has he mentioned anything to you? Violet remained silent at my question. Based on her reaction, the man she'd been seeing until recently was undoubtedly her fiancé.
There's no way I've been deceived,
she muttered, slumping to her knees. Rather than feeling betrayed, she seemed more upset about being the other woman. Furiously, she took out her phone to contact the man, but he hung up on her the moment she explained the situation.
This can't be happening,
Violet raged. Roseanne and Isaac desperately tried to calm her down, but no one could stop her in her fury. I watched this disastrous family drama unfold with immense amusement. Anyway, I've made my decision, so make sure you sign the divorce papers, Isaac. He said nothing. And I know you don't have much in assets, but you still have some savings set aside for emergencies, right? I'll be taking that in the property settlement.
You can't be serious. You'd go that far?
He raised his voice in disbelief. Of course I would. I smiled at him. He probably saw me as a demon, but this was only natural. I supported your parents even though I never wanted to. I'll be recouping that money, thank you very much. And so, I forcibly kicked out my stupefied in-laws and Isaac to start my new life. Afterwards, Violet frequently showed up at my apartment building, or rather, at the home of the woman her supposed fiancé had been seeing. Their repeated fights led to the police being called. It turned out Violet was just the man's fling, and the woman living in my building was his real fiancé. Violet's marriage plans were apparently a misunderstanding on her part. She had taken his joke seriously, gotten the marriage paperwork herself, and gotten carried away. She seemed unusually sincere for once, but too bad for her. That wasn't all. The family, having lost their house and money, had been counting on Isaac's savings. But those plans were ruined when I demanded my share in the divorce. As a result, relationships in Isaac's family rapidly deteriorated. At first, Isaac was blamed for not keeping me around, but unable to take it anymore, he finally got furious and had a huge fight with Roseanne.
It's your fault for spoiling Violet. My wife got angry because of you,
he accused them, ignoring his own actions.
I'll distance myself from my parents and change my ways, so will you remarry me?
He begged me to take him back. As if I'd ever remarry him. He really is too naive. Roseanne, scolded by Isaac, couldn't stand that he was finally standing up to her after being so obedient. She was livid. After fighting endlessly, they finally realized Violet not working was the root problem, leading to a huge blow-up that involved the whole family. In the end, the family fell apart. The parents-in-law wanted to separate or divorce, but lacking money, they had to keep living together without even speaking. Isaac found a new job with company housing, but it turned out to be a horrible black company. His health deteriorated and he quit after a few months. As for Violet, she was suddenly sued by the wife of a married man she'd dated in the past, forcing her to work. Regular jobs paid too little, so she started working at a nightclub. But her health also failed due to alcohol. With things like this, they had no choice but to move back in with their parents. They became a dysfunctional family, all living together despite not getting along at all. When you depend on others to get by, it always catches up with you eventually. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work after the divorce. I had avoided overtime and turned down promotions because I prioritized my family. But working more led to a promotion to area manager at an apparel company. It's not an easy job and the company culture isn't perfect, but I get along with my coworkers and find it fulfilling. The pay is good too, and above all, it's an enjoyable workplace. I'm single now and sometimes feel like experiencing the excitement of romance again. But for now, I'm content with my job being my love. What's that? Is there really nothing going on? Well, actually, my realtor friend Huey Hen I met solding the house has been asking me out to dinner lately. He's been a great listener for all the stress I dealt with after the divorce. We go way back and he's a truly good person. I had never thought of him that way, but I've slowly started to take an interest in him too. He suddenly celebrated my birthday and such. When he was drunk. It would be nice to have you as a wife. He even said. I mean, that's clearly showing interest, right? No, maybe I'm overthinking it. I mean, I'm not exactly young anymore. I'm not about to get carried away over some words like that. But if the feelings are mutual, maybe it wouldn't hurt to take a step forward. Still, I want to enjoy this sweet atmosphere just a little longer. That's how I feel right now.
I'll prove that you're the culprit.
It was my father-in-law, Connolly, who was glaring at me and intimidating me with his loud voice. He had come home early and appeared in front of me with noisy footsteps. Ever since I started living in my in-laws' house, whenever Connolly gets angry, his voice can always be heard up to the second floor of the house. I hate this voice that I can hear even when I cover my ears and it doesn't stop.
Listen up. If you're the culprit, I'll call the police.
He treats me like a criminal and thinks he's always right.
Apologize quickly. If you do, your crime will be a little lighter.
My husband, Elliot, who continues to believe his parents' story over mine and does as they say.
If you tell the truth now, I'll forgive you. So please apologize.
My mother-in-law, Caddy, who has no real power in this house, but still talks down to me. No matter how much I care about this family, I'm reminded that I'm ultimately an outsider. This family thinks I'm a criminal. However, even in a hopeless situation, I can't acknowledge what I can't acknowledge. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything to be ashamed of. Even if no one believes me, I can't bend my own beliefs. If they can prove it, then let them prove it. Who is the one who has truly done something shameful?
I understand. Then, I will also prove my innocence.
I'm Vivian, a 27-year-old housewife. My husband Elliot, who is the same age as me, is training every day to become a pastry chef. Elliot's family runs a pastry shop. When there's a celebration, it's this shop's pastries. And it's a shop that locals say. It's a pastry shop that Elliot's grandfather started, and it has many long-time customers. In order to become the third-generation owner, Elliot is working hard every day under Connolly. Elliot and I met 7 years ago. At the time, I was attending a vocational school to become a hairdresser and was invited by a friend to a party. Among the bright and talkative male college students, Elliot was the one who was quietly drinking while staring at his glass. I wondered if he was shy, so I asked, "Are you from the same university as everyone else?" And he,
"No, I'm actually in vocational school,"
replied. "I'm in vocational school too. Because my dream was to become a hairdresser."
"I have no choice. But now that I've decided to do it, I'm going to do my best. I see. But it's wonderful that you're trying to work hard. By the way, is there something about that glass that caught your attention? You've been staring at it for a while. Since I make pastries, I was wondering how they create such a mysterious color combination. The glass that Elliot had been staring at indeed had a mysterious color, with blue and red mixing together. When I heard vocational school, I had selfishly imagined cosmetology. Pastries. I'm sorry, I selfishly assumed it was cosmetology. So I was surprised and apologized. No worries. Most people assume cosmetology when I say vocational school, so I'm used to it. I see. But being a pastry chef is wonderful. Pastries have depth and stories. I really like them. Thank you. Please do try them sometime. Perhaps he was a bit embarrassed, but I couldn't see Elliot's expression at all as he spoke while looking down. Yes. I'm looking forward to it. But even though I said that, I'm sure he was offended that I had mistaken him for a cosmetology student. I thought we would never meet again. However, he actually made pastries for me and brought them to my vocational school. When I opened the pastry box that he had brought, pale pink flower-shaped pastries emerged from inside. It was as if flower petals blooming in front of where we were sitting had fluttered down. Beautiful. The words slipped out unintentionally. Thank you. And Elliot replied shyly. Vivian, I might be awkward with words and not very interesting, but if it's all right with you, could we continue meeting from now on? It was a sudden invitation, but I didn't feel uncomfortable. From then on, with each passing season, Elliot would gift me colorful pastries. And when we both got jobs, on the third spring, he proposed to me with a flower ring made of pastry. I want us to always be together, so please marry me. I had always wanted to be by the sincere his side, so I answered without hesitation. Thank you. Let's always be together. When you say a family that runs a business, it gives the impression of being formal and strict, but his parents. Vivian, thank you for coming today. Caddy, who smiled amiably, had a kind aura and the pale yellow dress suited her well. Don't be nervous. We're the ones who are more nervous. Connolly, who laughed heartily, had the aura of a true artisan. It's an old shop. Young people these days might not like it, but we're running it modestly. If you'd like, please try the pastries I made. Then Connolly said as he offered them to me. Unlike the pastries that he makes, these had a sense of dignity that came through even in the sweets. Thank you for the food. The pastries that he made had a flavor that went well with coffee, giving the impression of truly old-fashioned pastries. Caddy also helps out in the store, but I wonder if we could ask Vivian to help out a bit after the wedding? To be honest, I liked my job as a hairdresser and didn't want to quit. However, my desire to be with Elliot was stronger. Yes, I would be happy to help out while learning from Caddy. And so, I began living with my in-laws and occasionally helping out at the store. After our wedding, a pastry boom occurred among young people. A drama about pastry chefs was broadcast on TV, and young aspiring chefs even came to my in-laws' store. It was a small shop, but a TV crew even came to cover it. I thought that Elliot's pastries might be more suited for young people, and wondered if Elliot should be the one interviewed, but it was Connolly who was interviewed instead of him. Before long, the young customers gradually dwindled. The youth boom disappeared in an instant, like a match flame going out. Along with the fading boom, sales at my in-laws' pastry shop decreased. Not only that, even the regular customers from before were starting to leave. It was because there were times when the pastries they wanted were sold out due to the influx of young people. A low-priced pastry shop also opened nearby, with various pastries displayed in the storefront, causing sales to plummet. Let's make new products that the pastry shop over there can't make, Elliot suggested, and they tried test selling a few, but the results were not promising. Because of that, the atmosphere at my in-laws' home was getting worse day by day. It's because a pastry shop like that opened up nearby. Even my in-laws, who
who had never said anything negative before, only complained and grumbled whenever they opened their mouths. Elliot also stopped coming up. They won't sell anyway. With new products, saying. Hoping they would persevere, I used the internet and every information network I could to think of ways to advertise the pastries without spending money. Then, an online post caught my eye. Pastry contest. The content was about making pastries that go well with coffee and deciding on a winner. I immediately printed it out at home and ran to the store where my in-laws and Elliot were.
Elliot! Connolly! Caddy! Look at this!
When I showed them the contest information, all three of them stared at it intently. Their faces brightened.
This could be great advertising.
And Connolly said,
Vivian, thank you. I'll also compete with my pastries.
Elliot said, his face filled with motivation for the first time in a while. From then on, both Connolly and Elliot continued making pastries every day. And on the day of the contest, I was surprised to see the pastries they showed me with confidence.
Did you notice? I was originally thinking of making something new, but I ended up going with the flower ring I used to propose to Vivian.
The gold representing the color and light of the flower was shining. It was a special pastry for me, and I was happy that Elliot chose this pastry for the contest.
And Connolly's is.
When I peeked inside the box, there were the cakes and cookies that I had first been treated to.
Whenever I entertain someone, I always go with these, so I'll compete with them.
Confidence emanated from Connolly's face. These pastries were filled with Connolly's unique style. I also thought these pastries were great. I felt like they could win an award in the contest. I sent the two of them off with a prayerful feeling. As I waited for their return, Caddy said to me with full confidence as I clasped my hands in anxiety, I'm sure at least one of them will win an award, so don't worry. End tension. Caddy and I prepared a feast and waited for Elliot and Connolly to return. Even though the award ceremony for the contest was at 3 p.m., there was no contact even after 8 p.m. passed. Caddy said, maybe they're out drinking to celebrate? But neither of them answered their phones. I became worried and was about to consult the police when the front door of my in-laws' house opened. The two of them seemed drunk. As soon as he got home,
There, a nightmare is here,
Connolly said to me. Seeing this,
don't tell me it went badly,
Caddy said in astonishment.
What? It went completely badly. The technique, the appearance, everything,
Connolly said loudly while tapping the wall.
It's because of this person that we were utterly humiliated. We shouldn't have entered that thing. It was a waste of time. Even the judges don't know anything about pastries. We shouldn't have listened to what this person said.
He pointed at me and said it over and over again.
Let's drink some more. Elliot, join me,
he said and sat down in the living room of my in-laws' house, deliberately making loud noises, and started drinking with Elliot. Even after drinking, his anger didn't seem to subside.
It's because an amateur like you tried to tell us what to do. Our store sales have dropped since you came. You demon. Your presence makes the alcohol taste bad, so get lost.
He directed his anger at me. At first, I tried to convey my own feelings, saying,
I really love both of your pastries. That's why I recommended the contest.
But no matter what I said,
shut up. You're probably laughing on the inside. You're an outsider after all.
He wouldn't listen to me. Eventually, could you go home? His mood won't improve with you here. Caddy also started saying. Even when Elliot saw me being subjected to Connolly's abusive language, he didn't stand up for me or make his presence known. Seeing his behavior, I thought that no matter what I said to Connolly today, it wouldn't get through to him. I'll excuse myself for today, I said and left my in-laws' house. But our house was a two-family home, so I just went upstairs to the second floor. I could still hear his loud voice whether I liked it or not.
Why did you marry a wife like that? You don't have to force yourself. Why don't you divorce her and remarry someone like your mom? Our longtime customers still favor us, so we can manage without participating in contests like that.
I crawled into bed as if to block out his voice, but I could still faintly hear it. At the same time, the sound of my own heartbeat echoed, and I couldn't fall asleep for a while. Unable to calm down, I spent time listening to the radio through earphones. The abusive words directed at me that I could hear through the earphones gradually disappeared little by little, and I started hearing laughter. Compared to the person who had said such abusive things to me now laughing, it felt so empty and sad to be listening to Connolly's voice through earphones. At 2 a.m., Elliot also returned to our room, and the long day ended. From that day onward, my in-laws' attitude towards me changed. When I helped out at the store, they would say in front of regular customers, "Sorry that our son's wife is so inattentive," or mock me, saying, "You probably still can't understand the excellence of these pastries." Caddy would say things like, "Elliot's childhood friend Malia is pregnant with her second child. What about you two, still no children? Is there something wrong with you?" And Connolly would say, "Even if my son's wife is good for nothing, I at least want to see a grandchild. We'll be in trouble if you don't give birth to a successor for this store. Why don't you go to the hospital?" They started making snide remarks about us not having children yet. I myself wanted children, so my heart ached every time they said those things. I went to the hospital for a consultation. They only advised me to not accumulate stress, but they couldn't figure out the factors making it difficult to have children. I racked my brain every day trying to figure out how to improve this situation. When I consulted with relatives, "I'll let people around me know," they said. Fortunately, many of my relatives were self-employed, and they said they would use the pastries as treats for customers who came to their stores. When I met up with friends and brought Elliot's pastries as a gift, "I'll advertise them for you, Vivian," they said. The one who said that was Jaylene, my childhood friend who is now a popular violinist. She was always cheerful and has been my #1 ally since we were little. Jaylene was the only one I could confide in about worries that I couldn't talk to my parents about. When I talk to her, any worry feels like a small matter. She has that mysterious effect. I'll try introducing them on social media. Even someone like me has fans, so I'm sure they'll buy them. I was saved by Jaylene's smiling face as she said that. I used to go to my former workplace once a month to get my hair cut, so I asked them to buy pastries during those times. The easygoing manager's eyes clouded over for a moment.
But you know, we have a lot of young people here, so I'm not sure if advertising will work." "I understand. But I think even young people will like this beautiful appearance and delicious taste." As I made an impassioned speech, the manager also said, "All right, I got it. Fine. Nowadays, it's all about whether it's Instagrammable on social media, right?" They agreed to put a small model of the pastries on the storefront and place pamphlets. Indeed, in this day and age, it's all about social media. Both my best friend and the manager said so. I also have some knowledge about social media, so this might lead to a recovery in the store's sales. With that thought, as soon as I got home, I immediately started preparing by editing photos for social media and thinking of advertising slogans. I had Elliot take a look when he got home, and we started advertising right away. As we introduced a menu tailored for younger customers, the store gradually started to attract new patrons. We began receiving regular orders from relatives, and even customers from the beauty salon where I used to work started dropping by. The day after my best friend promoted the store on social media, I updated our store's advertisement. I saw it on Instagram and wanted to try it out, so I came by. And we saw an increase in customers saying, our sales slowly started to recover, and our revenue reached a break-even point compared to before the contest. Just as I thought we were on the path to profitability,
there were more and more days where the sales numbers didn't add up. The discrepancy started at $1, but gradually increased from $10 and eventually ballooned to $100. At first, I thought it might have been an order mix-up, but it was unlikely for there to be a $100 difference, and suspicions arose that I might be stealing the money.
Vivian, do you really not know anything about this?
Caddy pressed me for answers. There's no point in pretending to work hard to boost sales if you're just pocketing the money yourself. Connolly had already decided that I was the thief.
If you're short on cash, just tell us.
Even my in-laws were casting doubt on me. Initially, I tried to explain. I didn't take anything. But faced with the reality that no one believed me, I felt empty and lost my words.
The fact that you're not even denying it is proof enough.
With that, I was branded as a thief. Even so, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, so I endured it, believing that the truth would come to light eventually. Then one day, after finishing work at home, I heard loud footsteps. The door to our room on the second floor burst open.
Get downstairs right now!
And Connolly shouted with a demonic expression. Startled, I turned off the stove and immediately descended the stairs to the living room of my in-laws' house. Elliot and Caddy were already there.
Sit there.
I did as I was told and sat next to Elliot. Connolly said,
I've got evidence. We'll find out who the thief is now. If the facts are confirmed, I'm turning you over to the police.
With heavy breathing. I had no idea what he was talking about, and as I remained silent, Elliot spoke up.
Of course, if you've been stealing, it's embezzlement. Let's call the police.
Elliot looked at me as he said it. It seemed that even Elliot thought I had stolen the money.
Yesterday, when I checked the safe after closing, the numbers didn't add up again. So, I installed a camera to make the culprit confess to their crime. What?
I was surprised that Connolly, who was so technologically inept that he couldn't even record TV shows, had set up a camera by himself. Caddy and Elliot also seemed surprised, as they weren't aware of it either. Come to think of it, Caddy and Elliot had gone out shopping yesterday, so I was the only one at home.
This morning, when I checked the contents of the safe again, more money was missing. No one else entered the store, so the only possibility is that you, who was in this house, stole it.
Connolly was making a passionate speech, as if he were the protagonist of a detective drama.
Then you should have talked to me about it first.
Elliot said.
I was going to tell you and Caddy. But she was nearby, so I couldn't say anything. I was worried she might overhear, hide the evidence, and run away.
It's true that the circumstantial evidence was piling up, but I didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I've been working hard in my own way to contribute to increasing the store's profits. I would never steal money from the precious store.
You still won't admit it?
You're a persistent woman.
Connolly seemed to want me to confess, but this was no joke. I hadn't fallen so low as to commit a crime.
Vivian, if you did it, just apologize properly. It's not something that can be forgiven, but denying it despite all this circumstantial evidence is unsightly.
Even Elliot, who should have seen me working hard at home to promote the store on social media, didn't believe me. The emptiness I felt slowly turned into anger. If that's how it was going to be, I would see for myself if it was really true.
Fine. Let's watch the video. If I'm on it, you can call the police or do whatever you want. I'll apologize or do anything. You think you won't be on it? You persistent woman. I bet you think you acted in a way that wouldn't be caught on camera. But this camera captures faces clearly even in the dark. Prepare yourself.
As Connolly and I argued, Caddy intervened.
Honey, you don't need to go that far, do you? Exposing her in front of everyone. Vivian, if you apologize honestly, I'll forgive you. So please, apologize.
She had never stood up for me before. Caddy always did whatever Connolly said. Perhaps she felt sorry for me, as I had never raised my voice like this before.
No. Caddy, if I'm on that camera, I have nothing to be troubled about. Let's all watch it together right here. But in exchange, if I'm not on it, you have to stop suspecting me from now on. All right? Let's see it then, you thief!
Saying that, Connolly operated the TV remote. The usual store interior appeared on the screen. As expected, it was dark and hard to see clearly. Caddy, who usually remained silent until Connolly started talking, was the first to speak up. It's too dark to see anything. Maybe the camera placement was bad? Let's check the lighting positions and set up the camera again.
No, I made sure this position would work.
Connolly wouldn't listen. In the darkness, someone appeared in the store. Without hesitation, they headed straight for the safe and opened it. All right, here it comes. Connolly stared intently at the screen. I wish it was a bit brighter. The face wasn't clearly visible in the darkness.
I'm pretty sure this video camera has an automatic low-light correction feature that should make the person's face clearly visible after a little while.
Indeed, the screen was gradually getting brighter.
What?
The camera's brightness correction must have finished. The focus sharpened, and even in the darkness, the face became clearly visible.
You! Why?
Mom. On the screen was Caddy, holding money in her hand and about to close the safe. When she turned around, Caddy's face was pale, and she opened her mouth, making a soundless cry. Connolly's face, which had been dumbfounded, turned bright red, and once again transformed into a demonic expression.
You were the one stealing? Why would you do something like this?
Collapsing to her knees on the spot, curling up into a small ball. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Caddy just kept apologizing through her tears. I was appalled by this exchange and said, "Shall I call the police?" As I picked up the phone. Caddy clung to my feet.
Anything but that,
she begged, sobbing.
What do you want to do?
Should I call the police? I asked again, but...
No, wait,
Connolly said.
Vivian, this is a problem between them, so...
Elliot chimed in. Just a few minutes ago, they had been calling me a criminal and hurling abuse at me, but now my in-laws looked utterly dejected. I simply said, I'm tired, and returned to my own home. The next day, Elliot showed some awkwardness but didn't bring up yesterday's events. Caddy was apparently bedridden, so I went to the store, but Connolly didn't say anything either. I was appalled that they couldn't even apologize after accusing someone else and treating them like a criminal. Before Elliot and Connolly came home, I got the divorce papers and filled them out. I also efficiently packed my belongings. When Elliot and Connolly returned, I said, just like that day, Elliot, Connolly, please sit here. The two obediently sat down in the living room of my in-laws' house. I couldn't see her, but Caddy could probably hear me too. I began to speak in a slightly louder voice. Elliot, I want a divorce. I'm leaving this house today. I will also properly claim compensation for the emotional harassment I received from Connolly in this house and the defamation I suffered from being treated as a suspect yesterday. Please be aware of this. They were dumbfounded by my matter-of-fact speech.
Wait a minute. Compensation. Can't you reconsider somehow?
If I had felt that he needed me even a little emotionally, I might have reconsidered the divorce. But it seemed that the only thing on Elliot's mind was the payment of compensation.
No, if Vivian leaves, we'll lose our business connections and the effect of social media. The store will go under. I can't have a divorce.
If he had reflected on his past actions and apologized, I might have reconsidered a bit. But it appeared that this Connolly, too, only had the store's profits on his mind. Both of them were only thinking about themselves. I turned my back on the two of them as they desperately tried to stop me, left my in-laws' house, and returned to my parents' home. My parents were surprised by their daughter's sudden return, but when I explained the situation, they were outraged. I hadn't told them anything until now to avoid worrying them, so it must have been quite a shock. Feeling the presence of people who would get angry for my sake for the first time in a long time, I regained my composure. After my parents spoke to our relatives, the regular orders to the store at my parents' home were immediately stopped. I also told Jaylene, the violinist who had promoted the store on social media, "I'm sorry, even though you helped me out," saying, "Vivian, you've been through a lot." She comforted me. "And I'll be playing your favorite song on the radio today, so be sure to listen." Then she said, "That's right. Today was the day Jaylene's violin music would be broadcast on the radio." For the first time in a long time, I could listen to the radio peacefully, not to escape Connolly's nagging. By chance, the song that played was the same one I had listened to on my earphones on the day of the contest. With the gentle music filling the room, I felt like I had been freed from years of shackles. When I went to my former workplace, the beauty salon, to express my gratitude and apologies for everything up until now, the manager said,
"In that case, why don't you come work here again?"
inviting me back. I'm truly happy to be able to work at the beauty salon again. Wanting to finalize the divorce quickly, I sought out a law firm. Although I only have memories I'd rather not recall, as I was talking to the lawyer, Elliot called at an inconvenient time. "Vivian, won't you come back? Actually, Mom was kicked out of the house. Apparently, the reason Mom was stealing money was because she was going to bars to relieve stress. She originally liked young men, so even though Dad made her stop going out and she said she had quit, she thought no one would notice if she made it seem like you had stolen the money, so she would steal cash and go to see young guys. Can you believe it? But listen, without Mom, we can't keep the store running and we're in trouble. Please help." Even at this point, Elliot was still trying to manipulate me for their own benefit. "I have no intention of going back. Shall I take over the call?" the lawyer offered.
"Yes, please."
And I said, "The lawyer, from now on, I will be representing Vivian, so please refrain from contacting her directly," clearly stated. Thanks to that, even Elliot, who had been reluctant to agree to the divorce, grudgingly consented, and the divorce was successfully finalized. As for the compensation, it was acknowledged that I had suffered emotional distress, and they agreed to pay. After returning to my former workplace and working as a beautician, I hear various stories from customers. Apparently, my in-laws' pastry shop ultimately couldn't continue operating and went bankrupt. Elliot and Connolly are working part-time to make ends meet while paying off the massive debts from the pastry shop, and they look exhausted whenever I see them, according to regular customers at the salon. Meanwhile, Caddy was kicked out of my in-laws' house and is living alone in an apartment, but it seems she still can't quit going to bars. That's her way of escaping reality, I guess. I hear her debts have also ballooned quite a bit. The neighbors of my in-laws were gossiping about it. I'm now able to listen to such stories as if they're someone else's problem, living peacefully each day. Ever since I started cutting their hair, my parents are delighted to be told they look younger. Now, I feel happiness in my daily life, being able to please others and receive their smiles.